Chapter 12:12. The remaining dozen or so quasi-divine kings already felt fear in their hearts, but the temptation of the Sword Palace was too great. These people were still somewhat reluctant. Lin Jun didn't ask for them to completely give up. If he had enough time, then it would be fine. But in the distance, he already saw the violent ape king approaching, and the demonic corpse king had obtained a bit of time to recover. It once again erupted with a powerful aura of death, leading a group of silver-armored corpses to charge over. Lin Jun no longer tangled with anyone. It was enough for these quasi-divine kings to be timid for a while. A second ago, he erupted with divine power, his aura soaring to the heavens. He pounced at those quasi-divine kings, letting out an intimidating roar. Seeing such a powerful Lin Jun, these quasi-divine kings couldn't help but retreat in fright. But they didn't expect that Lin Jun, who was pouncing over, would suddenly teleport back to the Sword Palace. Then his spiritual power firmly locked onto the Sword Palace, about to absorb it into the divine world. In just 5 seconds, Lin Jun would be able to eliminate the Sword Palace's resistance and completely absorb it into the divine world. No one expected Lin Jun to make such a move. When they reacted and pounced at Lin Jun again, they had already wasted 2 seconds. Over a dozen quasi-divine kings charged over, attempting to stop Lin Jun from taking the Sword Palace. Lin Jun didn't even turn his head. Jackdaw suddenly swung back. Spatial Slash. Spatial Slash was an absolute art that Lin Jun had comprehended a long time ago. It was just that he couldn't use it here. Only after he learned how to construct boundaries could he use this move again. Suddenly attacking, everyone was caught off guard. 3 quasi-divine kings couldn't dodge in time, and just happened to be in the path of the Spatial Slash. They were directly hit. When charging over, they were one person, but when they encountered the Spatial Slash, they were cut in half. The 3 became 6 halves, setting off a storm of blood. This move intimidated everyone again, once again giving Lin Jun a second of time. There were still 2 seconds. Lin Jun, you brat. Don't think you'll succeed. In the distance, the demonic corpse king waved the 10,000 corpses banner in the air, and a gray and hazy death chi pierced through the air. It did not seek to kill Lin Jun in one strike. It only wanted to interrupt him for a moment. On the other side, the violent ape king was also rushing over. He was even faster than the monster corpse king, but he did not attack from afar. This was because just a moment ago, the violent ape king and the demonic corpse king, these 2 arch-enemies, had a brief exchange in the dimensional universe. The demonic corpse king interrupted Lin Jun from afar, while the violent ape king attacked him from close range. They had to make sure that Lin Jun failed to collect the treasures. The 2 sworn enemies made a simple cooperation that was almost flawless. If it was an ordinary person, they would have definitely failed. But this time, Lin Jun would not allow anyone to interrupt him. With a buzz above his head, the mysterious yellow pagoda appeared. The demonic corpse king's death chi was also a type of energy. It was a special type of energy, but it was still energy. If it was energy, it would be blocked by the mysterious yellow pagoda's mysterious yellow chi. The death chi came crashing down, causing the mysterious yellow pagoda's mysterious yellow chi to surge. Unfortunately, it still did not break. The demonic corpse king had failed. He did not have the ability to attack again for a short period of time. There was only 1 second left. The quasi-god kings and demonic corpse kings were in despair. They did not have time to stop Lin Jun. And at this critical moment, the violent ape king arrived. The violent ape king had rushed over when he discovered the Sword Palace. Unfortunately, he was located a bit far from the demonic corpse king's territory. Naturally, he was a bit slow and did not arrive in time for the first wave of battle. However, arriving early was not as good as arriving at the right time. As long as the violent ape king could interrupt Lin Jun at the last second, then Lin Jun would not have any chance. He was a fresh force and had great confidence in winning this battle. In the violent ape king's huge claws, there was a long staff carved with a dragon. High-grade equipment, coiling dragon staff. Born with divine strength, its physical attacks were extremely powerful. In terms of battle talent, The violent Ape King was definitely above the demonic Corpse King. The demonic Corpse King had more tricks up his sleeves. This coiling dragon staff had the soul of a divine dragon sealed inside. It was an extremely powerful weapon. Lin Jun, you have no chance. The violent Ape King roared and swung the coiling dragon staff. The staff instantly grew several hundred meters long and smashed towards Lin Jun. The surrounding air seemed to have been sucked dry by this attack. Under this staff, even the demonic Corpse King would have to retreat. He did not believe that Lin Jun would be able to keep the Sword Palace in this situation. The demonic Corpse King was galloping in the distance. Its eyes slightly narrowed. Lin Jun has no chance, but the violent Ape King is still not easy to deal with. It seems like I have to prepare to release my Metal Elite Zombie. As long as I can seize the Sword Palace, even if I have to sacrifice my Metal Elite Zombie, I will accept it. And those Quasi-God Kings had also reignited their confidence. If Lin Jun could not succeed, then the two Quasi-God Kings would definitely have a fierce battle. They might even have a chance to fish in troubled waters. The outcome of everything would depend on the violent Ape King's staff. And at this moment, a strange scene appeared. In the path of the violent Ape King's staff, a lotus flower bloomed. This lotus flower appeared very abruptly. It appeared just like that, out of thin air. The small flower bud's tip stood erect and just happened to block the long staff's attack path. In other words, it was above Lin Jun's head. The scene in front of everyone's eyes seemed to become very slow. They could clearly see that the lotus flower had bloomed. The flower petals unfolded and directly came into contact with the long staff. The long staff, that was as heavy as a mountain, was actually blocked by the flower petals. This was the power of life. This was the power of vitality. The long staff's ferocious attack path was slightly misaligned. As the saying goes, a mistake of a hair's breadth makes a difference of 1,000 miles. Because the flower petals slipped when the long staff fell beside Lin Jun, there was a small gap. Carrying an incomparably swift and violent astral wind, the long staff nearly brushed past the back of Lin Jun's head. If the violent Ape King's staff was not aimed at Lin Jun back then and smashed down a bit in front of Lin Jun, this staff would have hit Lin Jun. Unfortunately, there were no ifs in this world. If the violent Ape King's staff missed by a bit, then he would have lost this opportunity forever. Everything was within Lin Jun's precise calculations. The sudden appearance of the lotus flower changed everything. In the last second, the violent Ape King's staff missed its target. The enormous Sword Palace flashed with light, then disappeared in the air. It was completely absorbed into the divine realm by Lin Jun and became his personal property. Wayaya. Ghostface King Lin Jun, spit out the Sword Palace for this daddy. That's this daddy's. It doesn't belong to you. The violent Ape King, Demon Corpse King, and more than a dozen quasi-divine kings all went crazy. Seeing the symbol of enormous wealth and strength fall into the hands of others just like that, they could not remain calm. Attacks that blotted out the sky and covered the earth howled over. Everyone practically used all of their strength, wanted to get rid of Lin Jun. As long as they got rid of him, the Sword Palace would appear again. The Sword Palace appeared, but this time it appeared in the identity of Lin Jun's flying palace. Lin Jun already entered the Sword Palace, and everyone's attacks all landed on it. A dragonfly shakes a stone pillar. An egg hits a stone. Chapter 12:13. The violent Ape King's coiling dragon staff and the demonic Corpse King's myriad corpse banner flew up and down. Every strike was enough to destroy a star. They bombarded Lin Jun's Sword Palace. However, none of this had any effect. As a high-grade flying palace, the Sword Palace was the carrier of the 18 divine swords. Its sturdiness had completely exceeded their imagination. After all, flying palaces could release energy barriers. A faint barrier of light enveloped the outside of the palace. It flickered and blocked all of their attacks. However, the Sword Palace had just emerged from the volcano. Who knew how long it had been dormant? It seemed to be running out of energy. Damn it. Is this high-grade palace really that strong? It can still block attacks, even when it's running out of energy. Who invented this tortoise shell? With this thing, As long as Lin Jun doesn't come out, who can do anything to him? The violent ape king gritted his teeth. Everything has a limit. I don't believe the Sword Palace's barrier can block our attacks forever. Get people here. My people, your people, and the subordinates of these quasi-godly kings. Let them all come out and attack this palace for 3 days and 3 nights. Let's see if we can break through its defenses. All right, Lin Jun just ambushed me. If I don't vent this anger, I won't be able to rest easy. The demonic corpse king's face was also hideous. He shook the myriad corpse banner violently. The iron plate corpses, bronze plate corpses, and silver plate corpses all moved out. They used their sharp fangs and claws to attack the Sword Palace. The violent ape king was no pushover either. He grabbed a piece of hair on his head and blew it into the air. He actually turned into a group of ape gods. These monkeys all held a staff. They were basically at the high god realm. Some of them had even reached the level of quasi-godly kings. They swung their staffs and smashed down. The demonic corpse king snorted coldly from his nostrils. Deceitful. Unlike his demon corpses, which were all sealed in the myriad corpse banner, the violent ape king's monkeys all resided in his god realm. However, the violent ape king was willing to let them out by plucking their hair. It seemed like he was deliberately mystifying them. You guys go too. Otherwise, when the two of us break this tortoise shell, you won't be able to get any benefits either. Those quasi-divine kings were terrified by Lin Jun's slaughter earlier. Now, seeing 2 great divine kings besieging the Sword Palace, their hearts finally calmed down a little. Although Lin Jun was safe inside the Palace of Swords, he had no way to counterattack. He could try to see if he could break it. The only thing they were worried about was that Lin Jun would use the palace to escape the Mirror Lake continent. If that happened, they might not be able to stop him. However, it seemed that Lin Jun didn't show any signs of running away. Could it be that he hadn't thought of obtaining this treasure and hadn't prepared any energy blocks? After all, driving the flying palace required a lot of energy blocks. Everyone was suddenly confident. Without the energy blocks, the flying palace would be a piece of trash. They had a chance of taking it. Everyone swarmed forward and sent out their own subordinates. They surrounded Lin Jun's Sword Palace and began a round of fierce bombardment. Thousands of people, demonic corpses, and monkeys surrounded the flying palace. They gathered everyone's strength. They believed that if the hearts of the people were united, Mount Tai would move. Dripping water could penetrate a rock. Ropes could cut wood. Elite guards could fill the sea. The rumbling sounds outside were isolated by the barrier. When they reached Lin Jun's ears, they were extremely faint. It was as if he was an ordinary person. He couldn't even hear or feel these sounds. His attention was now attracted by the flying palace. This was Lin Jun's first time entering a flying palace. He didn't know what the other flying palaces looked like. However, there was no doubt that this Palace of Swords was the best. The palace was 1,000 meters long and 600 meters wide. The front was a little sharp and slightly streamlined. However, it wasn't a smooth streamline. The flying palace wasn't something that could fly on a planet. Instead, it could fly in the vacuum of space. There was no need to consider air resistance. A palace. This was a palace. Not only were there pavilions, but there was also a lush forest. Parasol trees, fusong trees, moon elf trees. Patches of forest covered most of the palace's surface area. These trees were obviously for birds to live in. This was because the previous owner of this flying palace was the owner of the 18 divine swords, the ruler of all birds. If it weren't for the fact that it could fly, this palace could be used as a small imperial palace on the ground. There were also 18 huge holes around the flying palace. They looked like they were meant to hold the giant swords. However, Lin Jun held Jackdaw and Flamingo and compared them a few times. The difference in size between the divine swords and the holes was too big. It was obvious that they weren't meant to be held in this way. Unable to figure it out for the time being, Lin Jun could only continue investigating. In addition to these buildings on the ground, there was also an energy storage below the palace. This energy storage was a huge warehouse. There were enough energy blocks to store 1 billion points. However, there weren't many energy blocks left. There were only a few 100,000 worth of energy blocks left. It was just enough to keep the energy barrier running. Although the high-grade palace could withstand a lot of attacks without the use of energy blocks, Lin Jun did not want to take the risk. He looked at his storage of energy blocks. There were about 10 million worth of energy blocks. He might as well fill up all of them into the energy storage. When he had money in the future, Lin Jun would definitely fill up the energy storage. After doing all this, he went to the main palace behind the palace. It was over 10,000 square meters in size. It was called the Temple of the Gods. This was where the 100-bird dominator used to live. It was also the core of the flying palace. Now that Lin Jun had stored it in the god realm and used his power of the will to guide it, the flying palace was now Lin Jun's treasure. As long as Lin Jun didn't die, no one would be able to take it away from him. However, Lin Jun still didn't know how to activate the palace and make it his own. Inside the Temple of the Supreme God, there was a huge control panel, and behind the control panel, there was a very comfortable throne. There were many bird carvings on the throne. It was probably the seat of the white bird dominator. Lin Jun had just sat down when she felt Chris's strange movements. Master, I sense that the core system of this flying palace can connect to my own system. Are you sure you want me to take control of this flying palace? Of course. I stole this flying palace to use it. Immediately figure out how to use it. Crazy quickly fused with the flying palace's core system. The control panel in front of Lin Jun lit up. While Crazy was upgrading, Lin Jun looked at the control panel. There were 18 small sword holes on the control panel. Every hole was engraved with the image of a bird. Above the first sword hole was a huge mutated phoenix. Then there was a kuanpeng, blue lawn, vermilion bird, peacock, goshawk, flying swallow. Lin Jun even saw his own jackdaw and flaming crane insignia. While he was thinking about how to use it, Crazy finished upgrading. Chapter 12:14. Hearing her voice, Lin Jun was overjoyed. Ever since he came to this particular star system, his authority level had dropped to rock bottom. The authority level he had in the new territories in the primordial realm was of no use here. He had to start from scratch, and the level of authority level increased gradually as one's realm increased. There were also additional levels, such as Purgatory Warrior, which could increase his authority level. Lin Jun's current authority level was very awkward. He was still a mid-god. Although he already had the combat power of a godly king, his divine power level was less than 3 million, so he couldn't advance to godly king. If he wasn't a godly king or a higher god, he could only have mid-god authority. Lin Jun didn't have the qualifications to participate in large-scale auctions or special occasions that required his identity. But he didn't expect that after obtaining the Sword Palace, he would obtain authority level. How is this possible? I only inherited this palace. How did I obtain such powerful authority? It's true, Master. This wasn't transferred by my will. This Sword Palace is the 100-bird Dominator's trump card. Inside, half of Dominator White Bird's authority level is inherited. After I received half of Dominator White Bird's authority, I have the authority level of an ordinary Dominator. The 100-bird Dominator is a powerhouse among the 81 Dominators. Lin Jun finally understood that this was arranged by the 100-bird Dominator. By inheriting the Sword Palace, he would automatically obtain half of Dominator White Bird's authority. There were too many things involved with Dominator authority. Every Dominator was a top customer of the Dimensional Universe Corporation. They could access almost any secret through the Dimensional Universe. But Lin Jun didn't have the time to look up the specifics of Dominator authority. Now that Violent Ape King and the others were attacking outside, Lin Jun didn't want them to be so arrogant. Tell me more about this Sword Palace. Master, first you need to be able to control this palace. The method is to insert a key into the corresponding hole to activate the corresponding sword hole. Wait, what's the key? What does the corresponding sword hole mean? The key is any one of the 18 swords, and the corresponding sword holes are the 18 enormous holes outside. The Sword Palace is Hegemon Whitebird's personal vehicle, and it has an extremely special function. Crazy said, ordinary flying palaces are used for flight and defense. They don't have any offensive abilities. But this Palace of Swords is different. Only when the 18 divine swords and the sword box are combined together can this palace be in its complete state. In its complete state, this flying palace is actually a top-grade weapon. What? It's actually a top-grade weapon. Lin Jun was already lucky enough to obtain a high-grade palace. He never thought that this thing would still be in a complete state, and it was even a top-grade one. The value of Flying Palace was almost the highest among all the weapons. That's right. This Palace of Swords has offensive capabilities. As long as the 18 swords are inserted into the corresponding sword holes, the core system will be powered by energy blocks and release powerful sword chi to attack people outside. The 18 sword holes can also be adjusted at short distances without any blind spots. Lin Jun suddenly understood. No wonder the energy storage was so large. It could store so many energy blocks at most. Not only did it consume energy for flight and defense, but it also consumed energy to release sword chi. Of course, it consumed energy as well. Lin Jun's interest was immediately piqued. He took out his Fire Crane Divine Sword and inserted it into the sword hole corresponding to the Fire Crane symbol. Master, the Flying Palace can now be activated. You can issue orders through me at any time, or you can just give me your authority. I've already taken full control of this palace. All right, crazy. I'll give you full control over my flying palace. You can attack the people outside at any time. No problem, Master. But you'd best insert Jackdaw into the sword hole as well. With 2 divine swords, it'll be easier to deal with the people outside. Lin Jun immediately pulled out Jackdaw and inserted it into the sword hole as well. The energy bar on the control panel dropped a few bars. The sword hole was fully charged. Go, teach those bastards a lesson. Crazy received Lin Jun's order and immediately fired. The Violent Ape King and the others have been fighting outside for quite a while. The Flying Palace's energy barrier flickered and rippled. Although they couldn't destroy the energy barrier in an instant, if they continued like this, the energy blocks would definitely be used up. Although they didn't know why Lin Jun didn't activate the palace and leave, this was exactly what they wanted. Lin Jun was hiding inside and couldn't fight back. They could fight as they pleased. The Demonic Corpse King led his zombie horde to the left, while the Violent Ape King led his monkeys to the right. The front was left for the group of quasi-god kings. These people and their subordinates numbered about 300 to 400. Although they didn't have as many subordinates as the Demonic Corpse King and the Violent Ape King, their firepower was the fiercest. After all, each of them had their own trump cards. Now that they were unleashing them without restraint, their combined power was above that of the God Kings. Crazy's first target was the center of this group of people. The Flamingo Sword was ready. The energy was fully charged. One shot of energy sword chi would consume 1 million points worth of energy blocks. Although 1 million points worth of energy blocks was incomparably expensive, its power was definitely worth its price. Aim, fire. Originally, there was a red light emitting from the sword hole. But in this chaotic situation, no one noticed it at all. With a rumbling sound, a 1,000-meter long fiery red sword light fiercely flew out from the sword hole. The 100-meter wide, long sword flew through the air at almost the speed of light. The sword flew through the sky, leaving behind a broken wall. 6 quasi-god kings and their 200-plus high gods were directly vaporized by this sword light. The fiery energy burned the heavens and destroyed the earth, sweeping away all traces. Only a few divine crystals floated in the air, emitting sparkling light, proving that these people had once existed. After this attack, the world became quiet. The Violent Ape King and the Demonic Corpse King simultaneously stopped what they were doing. They stared dumbfoundedly at that red sword chi flying into the distant horizon. Their hearts were cold. What dripping water-piercing stone? What Jingwei filling the sea? Bullshit. This flying palace wasn't a tortoise. It was a hedgehog. Those hedgehogs could even fly. With this flying palace, Lin Jun was practically invincible. As long as he didn't come out, no one could kill him. Perhaps a ruler could, but a god king definitely couldn't. The Demonic Corpse King didn't say anything else. He immediately recalled his corpse soldiers and drove his bone palace to fly into the distance. The violent ape king did the same. He found his flying palace and called back his subordinates to help out. He was also about to leave. Chapter 12:15. Seeing the Tree Demon King, Lin Jun immediately thought of the sovereign's imperial jade seal. Now that the Tree Demon King and the violent ape king were together, the imperial jade seal was undoubtedly in their hands. Hee, run. Let's see where you can run to. With a thought, Lin Jun drove the sword palace straight for the violent ape king's flying palace. The violent ape king fled to his own flying palace, but was shocked to see Lin Jun following him. How did this guy catch up? Run. Lin Jun's palace couldn't be broken. The violent ape king had no choice but to use the flying palace to escape. The flying palace sped up and rushed out of the volcano area, heading straight for the mirror lake and the exit. But just as he rushed out of the island, he saw Lin Jun's sword palace behind him. The difference in speed between his low-grade flying palace and Lin Jun's sword palace was like the difference between a tractor and a Ferrari. BZZT, 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 BZZT. The radio waves transmitted into the violent ape king's palace. It was Lin Jun's signal. Lin Jun's image appeared on the control panel screen. He smiled at the violent ape king. Stop struggling. You won't be able to get far with your flying palace. The violent ape king's monkey face was filled with anger. Lin Jun, don't go too far. I've already left the island. Are you still going to chase after me? Of course you're not worth killing, but you have to leave the item in your hand behind. Lin Jun's expression turned cold. I don't care if the Imperial Jade Seal is in your hands or the Tree Demon King's. Hand it over immediately or prepare to die. On the screen, one of Lin Jun's sword holes was preparing another powerful attack. This time it was Jackdaw. Lin Jun had already decided that if the violent ape king dared to be so long-winded, he would destroy his flying palace. The violent ape king knew that Lin Jun had come for the sovereign's Imperial Jade Seal, but he still wasn't willing to give up. Supreme Grade Battle Armor was extremely valuable, especially to God Kings. Supreme Grade Battle Armor was a life-saving trump card. Even as sovereigns, it was a valuable item. He really couldn't bear to part with it. But now, Lin Jun was so powerful. With the Sword Palace, they couldn't escape or defeat him. How could they not hand it over? Just as the violent ape king was hesitating, Lin Jun attacked. With a thought, Jackdaw's sword hole once again released a powerful flying sword aura. Sword chi tore through the sky and whistled as it arrived, and it struck the violent ape king's sword palace. Dazzling sparks instantly spread out for thousands of miles in the sky, and a huge hole appeared in the flying palace of the violent ape king. F***CK. Lin Jun, you bastard! How dare you destroy my flying palace? The violent ape king's eyes reddened. He was not an expert among god kings, nor was he rich. This flying palace was his greatest treasure. He had never thought that Lin Jun would almost cripple it with a single strike. 2 more hits, and the flying palace would be turned into scrap metal. The violent ape king had no choice but to lead his people out of the palace. As for the half-crippled palace, he put it into the god realm. He didn't dare let out again, hoping that one day it would be repaired and he could use it again. He had wanted the others to scatter and draw Lin Jun's attention, but he didn't think that Lin Jun would use the palace to lock onto him. Another sword energy was brewing, and it made his hair stand on end. Whatever. It seems that the mixed yuan armor is not fated to be with me. I'll just give it to him. The violent ape king was extremely unwilling, but there was nothing he could do. He took out the sovereign's Imperial Jade Seal and threw it in the direction of Lake Heart Island. Lin Jun could obviously sense the authenticity of the sovereign's Imperial Jade Seal. Seeing it fly towards Lake Heart Island, he could only temporarily let go of the violent ape king and the others in chase after the sovereign's Imperial Jade Seal. Just as he was about to catch up, Lin Jun rushed out of the palace. The demonic god wings behind him flapped, and he was about to grab the sovereign's Imperial Jade Seal. But at that moment, a figure suddenly shot into the sky. This person had snatched the sovereign's Imperial Jade Seal before Lin Jun did. It was green. Lin Jun's anger immediately rose. He had almost forgotten about this person. He didn't think that he would appear at this time. It had to be known that Green also had 8 Imperial Jade Seals. As long as he was given a bit of time, he would be able to obtain the mixed Yuan armor. This was something that Lin Jun absolutely would not allow. Just as Green obtained the Sovereign's Imperial Jade Seal, Lin Jun's attack arrived. Mental Evil Spirit All. Lin Jun's mental attack had a total of 3 moves. One was an ordinary mental attack. One was the Divine Might of Heaven's Will. And the last move was the Mental Evil Spirit All. In the past, this Evil Spirit All had helped Lin Jun a great deal by annihilating countless powerful enemies. But if he wanted to continue cultivating it to become stronger, he would need even more dead souls. It was too harmful to the harmony of the heavens, so Lin Jun didn't cultivate it. But now, Green's method of fishing in troubled waters had indeed provoked Lin Jun's angry roar. His first attack was a killing move. Green had just obtained the Sovereign's Imperial Jade Seal. He had wanted to immediately put it away and merge it with the other 8 Imperial Jade Seals. He hadn't expected that Lin Jun would be able to unleash such a powerful attack from so far away. He had a small mirror of his mental defensive equipment, but it had been shattered by Lin Jun's attack. After destroying his opponent's mental defensive equipment, Lin Jun was already in front of him. Grasping Jackdaw, he chopped down. Pooh! Green's arm holding the Imperial Jade Seal was chopped off. But after cutting it off, Lin Jun was shocked to discover that the Imperial Jade Seal was no longer in his hand. Green chuckled. His left hand pulled out a necklace from his chest. There was a dim sapphire on it. Lin Jun, what a powerful mental attack. But it's a pity. I am the son of the Sovereign. I have plenty of money. I have 2 pieces of mental defensive equipment. You broke one, but you couldn't break the other. Green became more and more proud. While you thought I was confused, I put away the Imperial Jade Seal. Now, prepare to see how my mixed Yuan armor appears. You're so shameless, Lin Jun said coldly. There's no point in saying this. If you're not convinced, you can only endure it. Now that I have the mixed Yuan armor, you should obediently scram. Otherwise, you might not even have the chance to see Lonely Star Fishing Old Man again. At this time, Green's body flashed. The mixed Yuan armor had appeared. The 9 Sovereign's Imperial Jade Seals had already filled up his 9 palaces. 28 for the shoulders, 37 for the feet, 46 for the hands, 1 for the top, 9 for the bottom, and 5 for the center. Shoulder, leg, hand, helmet, skirt, and breastplate connected into one piece. A layer of silver light flashed. Green's laughter could be heard. Ha ha ha. This is a top-grade armor. What a strong defense. Goodbye, Lin Jun. I'm leaving the Mirror Lake continent now. Bye-bye. When you become a divine king, we'll meet at Master's Place. Green was really desperate. Wealth came from danger. He had been hiding in the dark all this time. He had actually waited for an opportunity. With this armor, he believed that he would be able to escape from Lin Jun. There was no time to lose. After speaking, a pair of mid-grade wings appeared on Green's back. He got up and was about to escape. Although he had the armor to protect him, it did not mean that he could defeat Lin Jun. At most, he could only protect himself temporarily. Flapping his wings, he looked at Lin Jun with a smile. He wanted to see how flustered and exasperated he was. But after flying for a while, he felt that something was wrong, because Lin Jun was standing there motionlessly. The distance between them did not increase at all. What's going on? Green raised his head. Only then did he realize that he was already in the space created by Lin Jun. He had been flying for half a day, but he was actually in the same place. Chapter 12:16. Grim was in despair. He had the best equipment armor, but he was far from being a match for Lin Jun. Lin Jun was someone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with deity kings like the demonic Corpse King and the Violent Ape King. Grim, on the other hand, had just become a higher deity not too long ago. He might be able to escape with a mixed element armor, but in this space, even if he had 10 mixed element armors, he would still die. Even if Lin Jun couldn't hurt him, he couldn't hurt Lin Jun either. If he couldn't get out of here, Lin Jun had 10,000 ways to torture him to death. Looking at Lin Jun's cold face, Grim opened his mouth, but in the end, he could only submit to reality and take off the best equipment he had just obtained. Lin Jun took the mixed element armor. his heart filled with excitement. He finally got it. The mixed element armor was obtained with many twists and turns. He had gone through many hardships and defeated many competitors to get it. The mixed element armor was a super armor with all attributes. This armor had two forms. One was a stealth form, and the other was a combat form. In the stealth form, this armor could be hidden under the skin. It couldn't be seen from the outside, but its defensive power would be reduced. In the combat form, it was like Grim, covered from head to toe in shining silver armor. Its defensive power was especially strong. This armor was at least at the God King level. If one hadn't reached the God King level, they wouldn't be able to use its full power. It was probably comparable to a peak high-grade armor. After a higher god became a God King, their divine body would turn into an energy body. This armor had the ability to resist upper limits and reduce damage. The mixed element armor was completely immune to physical attacks below the God King level. It was the same for quasi-God Kings. And for God King level physical attacks, the mixed element armor could reduce damage by 90%. For God King level and above, the mixed element armor could also reduce damage by 50%. This was the power of the best equipment. It could protect one's divine body to the greatest extent, preventing fatal attacks. It was very useful even at the sovereign level. With this armor, Lin Jun would be able to face off against powerful God Kings or even sovereigns in the future. The Sword Palace was a safe place with unparalleled defensive capabilities. Whether it was physical attacks or spiritual attacks, it could withstand them all. But it was impossible for Lin Jun to stay in the palace forever. He had to come out at some point. Thus, the primordial armor was no less useful to him than the Sword Palace. Before Glenn could warm up the armor, it had become Lin Jun's spoils of war. Lin Jun waved his hand, and the armor entered the god world. His psychic power enveloped it, and when it came out again, it belonged to Lin Jun. The armor automatically covered Lin Jun's body, covering most of his body. The silver light was extremely beautiful. Furthermore, he didn't feel any discomfort or hindrance when he moved. Although Lin Jun hadn't advanced to God King, so he couldn't unleash the full power of this armor, it was enough for him. As long as he wasn't facing a top-grade weapon, no one would be able to break through his defense. With a thought, he hid the armor beneath his skin. Currently, under Lin Jun's skin, there was the mixed Yuan armor and the demon god wings on his back. At the same time, there was something else that he could hide, which was the lightning cloak. If Lin Jun put on more armor and added more metal to it, he would become the most thick-skinned person in the world. He looked at Glenn, who shivered. Lin Jun, there was no conflict between us. I just wanted this armor. That's right? Now that it's yours, our conflict is over. I've decided to give up the opportunity to become Master's disciple. Once I leave this place, I'll go home. Please spare my life. Lin Jun narrowed his eyes. Your father is a sovereign lord? Yes. My father is a wind sovereign. He told me to come out and gain experience. Back then, he told me not to bite off more than I could chew and to be down to earth. Unfortunately, I didn't listen to him and insisted on fighting for Lone Star Fishing Old Man's sovereign armor. Now it seems that I was too naive. I don't have that ability. Lin Jun sighed. Glenn, for your father's sake, I should have spared you. But do you remember? When I went to the demon planet, you didn't have the money to buy a ticket. I had to buy a ticket for you. In the end, you treated me like this. Tell me, should I have spared an ungrateful person like you? Green felt a little ashamed, but he still had to fight for his own life. Lin Jun, it's my fault. I hurt you. I'm not human. Lin Jun waved his hand. What you said can't make up for the wound in my heart. I was already in a bad mood because of the debt I owed to my race. Now that you've come to provoke me, it seems that I really should kill you to vent my anger. No. How much debt do you owe? I'll help you pay it off. Glenn's reaction was very fast. Not much. 1 billion. Lin Jun demanded an exorbitant price. This person was the son of a ruler. He definitely had a lot of money in his hands. If he didn't extort him now, Lin Jun would feel sorry for himself. Glenn's face turned pale. Lin Jun really dared to do this. 1 billion. Although he had some money, he was used to being extravagant. He couldn't take out this much money. After selling the things in his hands for a while, Glenn finally managed to scrape together 700 million. Lin Jun, I really don't have any money. If you don't believe me, I can share my account with you. 700 million is going to drain me dry. Lin Jun didn't hold back. He directly shared Glenn's Dimensional Universe account. This guy really didn't have any money. At first, Lin Jun thought that this was enough. But then, he suddenly saw Glenn's weapon, the vermilion bird of the 18 divine swords. Within the 18 divine swords, there were 2 of each element. They were divided into the upper 9 swords and the lower 9 swords. The vermilion bird was one of the top 9 swords of the fire element. Lin Jun's jackdaw and flamingo were both of the bottom 9 swords. Seeing this, Lin Jun's heart skipped a beat. He pointed at the sword. Let me use this. Glenn didn't want to take out this sword, but at this time, he knew that he could not take it out. If he wanted to save his life, he had to spend money. He reluctantly handed over the vermilion bird. Lin Jun took it. That's enough, Glenn. You and I are even. From now on, we don't owe each other anything. With that, Lin Jun opened up the space, turned around, and walked into the Palace of Swords. Glenn had a sad face. He flapped his wings weakly and flew toward the exit of the Mirror Lake continent. After this blow, he was disheartened. His future achievements would be very limited. Lin Jun didn't care about these things. Glenn's sudden appearance this time was a good thing. He obtained the mixed yuan armor, paid off his debt, and had 500 million points. He also obtained the vermilion bird of the 18 swords. Lin Jun could be considered to have reaped a great harvest from the Mirror Lake continent this time. There were still 3 months before the eruption of the volcanoes in the Mirror Lake continent. Some quasi-divine kings had already left. Chapter 1217. Lin Jun hesitated for a while, but still decided to leave. He had already gained a lot from this expedition. Currently, he was only lacking a few pieces of equipment. A good domain-type equipment, a spear, and a spiritual defense. That was all he needed. Although there was a high chance that the expedition would yield good equipment, he was already out of the Sword Palace. No matter how good the equipment was, it wouldn't be better than this. Furthermore, when the volcano erupted and chaotic energy surged, Lin Jun couldn't guarantee his safety even with the Sword Palace and mixed yuan armor. Currently, he had 700 million points. Lin Jun returned the 200 million that Hai Yun lent him and bought another 100 million energy blocks. He stored them in the Sword Palace's energy storage. He also put the newly obtained vermilion bird sword into the sword slot and swapped it out with jackdaw. Before he comprehended the true essence of fire, Lin Jun wasn't as comfortable using the vermilion bird as jackdaw. Looking back at the island, Lin Jun activated the Sword Palace and rushed towards the exit. The expedition at Mirror Lake had caused quite a commotion in the past 30 years. Within the Sea of Constellations, some people knew about Ghostface King Lin Jun. Although those king-ranked experts didn't think that Lin Jun had the strength to be a king-ranked expert, they couldn't ignore his glorious achievements, especially those who had a grudge against Lin Jun. There was a dangerous place in the Sea of Constellations called the Underworld Continent, for people were training there. Or it could be said that one person was training while the other 3 were protecting him. The person training was fighting with some undead creatures in the Underworld Continent. The pair of hammers forged from star metal danced in his hands, shattering the undead creatures into pieces. The 3 people around him were sitting far away, cultivating and chatting at the same time. Of these 3 people, one had a pair of bronze hammers, one had 2 silver hammers, and the last one had 2 golden hammers beside him. These 4 people were the 4 leaders of the 8 great hammers. Golden hammer Lu Simon, silver hammer Zhang Huang, copper hammer Wang Xingba, and the person training was iron hammer Zhu Yuanhu. Zhu Yuanhu was currently a peak quasi-divine king. Looking at his aura, there seemed to be faint signs of a breakthrough. Lusman and the other 2 were all god kings. In particular, Lusman's presence was extremely shocking. Just by sitting there, he seemed like the core of a galaxy. He was clearly an expert among god kings. On the other hand, Silver Hammer Zhang Huang's strength was also very outstanding and was close to Lusman's. Even Copper Hammer King Xingba seemed to be slightly stronger than Demonic Corpse King and Violent Ape King. Zhang Huang looked at Zhu Yuanhu in the middle of the battle and slowly said to Wang Xingba, "Third brother, you're not anxious anymore, right?" Wang Xingba shook his head slightly. "I'm not in a hurry now. When I first found out that Wang Chong was killed, I was indeed very anxious. However, the life of a son is nothing compared to us brothers breaking through to the godly king realm. If I didn't break through this heart demon, I wouldn't have advanced to the godly king realm. That's right. As a martial artist, you must have the ability to let go of the hatred in your heart at any time. Even if you can't completely forget it, you should at least not let it affect your cultivation. You've done well in this aspect. Fourth brother didn't do well in the past, but it seems like he's done it now," Lusman slowly said. Wang Xingba rubbed the hammer in his hand a few times. I can only forget it temporarily. However, now that I've broken through, as long as I protect fourth brother and let him advance to the godly king realm, the two of us can go out and take revenge." Zhang Huang nodded. "That's right. That Lin Jun is too arrogant. He actually killed 2 of my nephews. He doesn't put us 8 great hammers in his eyes at all." Wang Xingba's eyes shone with hatred. He probably never dreamed that we would all break through to the godly king realm one after another. However, by the time he realizes it, it will be too late. At this moment, Lusman spoke. "Lao San, you're too impatient. Once fourth brother completes his breakthrough, the 4 of us can even fight against a ruler if we join forces. Why would we care about Lin Jun? Calm down a little." "Yes, big brother. I was a little out of control just now. After advancing to the godly king realm, my mentality has indeed changed." Wang Xingba was also quite good. He quickly adjusted himself, but the anxiety in his eyes couldn't be concealed. Lin Jun's flying palace finally flew away from the Mirror Lake continent. When they first came here, there were 4 of them. Now, only Lin Jun was piloting the flying palace. He didn't want to return to the gathering point in the Snow Mountain continent. There was nothing for him to do there. Lin Jun had already reached the peak of the middle celestial stage. However, he still had a long way to go before he could advance to the higher celestial stage. To Lin Jun, advancing to the higher celestial stage was advancing to the godly king realm. This process was an extremely important step in his cultivation path. When condensing his divine body, Lin Jun hoped to accomplish a few things. He wanted to pass through more levels of the heavenly platform and condense more divine clones. Lin Jun wasn't worried about passing through the heavenly platform. Lonely Star Fishing Old Man gave him 3,000 years. Only 30 years had passed. He still had plenty of time. The only thing he was worried about was the comprehension of the true essence of the elements. He had already comprehended the metal element. Currently, he was still lacking in the fire, earth, and wind elements. Among these 3 elements, Lin Jun was more confident in comprehending the fire element. He had the deepest grasp of fire. However, he didn't take the initiative to cultivate it. Instead, he chose the harder element first. The wind and earth elements were Lin Jun's current weakness. "Chris, I now have the authority of a sovereign. Can you help me check if there are any places near me that are suitable for me to comprehend the true essence of the wind and earth elements? I will find it very soon. Please wait for a moment, Master." Chris found the answer within a minute. "Master, I've already found the 2 most suitable locations. The best place to comprehend the wind element is within the Sea of Constellations. It's called Skywind Valley. It's about 10 light years away from where you are now." Lin Jun nodded. 10 light years wasn't too far away. He could drive the Sword Palace there. During this time, he could also pass through the heavenly platform. What about the earth element? If it's the earth element, you need a place with dense earth energy. Although the Sea of Constellations is huge, there aren't any huge planets. The best place is still the Fiend Star. That planet is big enough and has dense earth energy. If Master wants to cultivate there, it's best to return to the Fiend Star. Lin Jun rubbed his chin. Returning to the Fiend Star. He came from the Fiend Star and had just explored a wasteland. He didn't want to go back so soon. It was better to go to Skywind Valley and comprehend the wind element first. Lock on the flight path. I want to go to Skywind Valley first. Once I'm done cultivating there, I'll return to the Fiend Star to comprehend the Earth element. After that, I'll be able to break through to the Divine King realm. The Sword Palace began to accelerate. It soon reached the limit of sublight speed. It was only a hair's breadth away from light speed. This way, it wouldn't enter a parallel universe due to the antimatter principle. Chapter 12:18. Lin Jin's plan was perfect. As he flew, he cultivated peacefully in the Palace of Swords. Once he reached Skygale Valley, he would enter seclusion, comprehend, and then return. In the beginning, this was indeed the case. Lin Jin cultivated very well in the palace. After a year, he passed the 27th level of the heavenly platform. After passing the 27th level, Lin Jin's dark matter had increased by 30 points. So the further I go on the heavenly platform, the more my dark matter increases. This means that the 28th level will increase by 40 points, and the 29th level will increase by 50 points. At the 29th level, I'll be able to condense a divine metal avatar. At the 31st level, I'll be able to condense another divine avatar. Lin Jun estimated that by the time he reached Skygale Valley, his divine metal avatar would be more or less condensed. And on the way back to the demonic star, his divine wind avatar would also be more or less condensed. However, after flying for 3 years, Chris told him that the energy in the energy storage was about to run out. Run out of energy? When I came, I only added 100 million energy crystals. Master, 100 million points isn't a small amount, but it's not enough to keep the Palace of Swords flying for too long. A palace of this size consumes a few million points every month. 100 million points can only keep it running for 3 years. No way. A high-grade palace consumes that much? A few dozen years of flying is enough to buy a low-grade palace. Lin Jun felt that this was too wasteful. Who could afford to fly like this? Master, I have to correct a mistake. The Palace of Swords looks like a high-grade palace, but it's actually a peak-grade palace. Its actual consumption is also based on a peak-grade palace. According to your hometown's calculations, this is the equivalent of a fighter jet. 3 years of fuel is enough to buy any type of car. Also, a peak-grade palace should be a ruler's ride. Do you think that a ruler would reduce the performance of his ride just to save energy crystals? Lin Jun was speechless. A ruler naturally wouldn't care about energy crystals, but he wasn't a god king yet. For him to fly such a good palace was a bit too much. Lin Jun could buy a shield ship and fly slowly, but that would take too much time. A journey of 10 years might become a few hundred or 1,000 years, which was unacceptable. He still had 400 million points. If he wanted to reach Skywind Valley, he would need at least 300 million points. Lin Jun gritted his teeth and used all 300 million points to buy energy blocks and fill up the energy storage. As a result, he only had 100 million points left. It wasn't enough for him to travel back. Master, you can slow down a little and control the time to reach Skygale Valley to about 20 years. This can reduce the energy consumption by 50%. Lin Jun sighed. For the sake of the travel expenses, he could only do this for the time being. The speed of the Sword Palace had decreased from sublight speed to sublight speed, and the 18 sword holes were temporarily sealed. They were no longer in a state where they could be supplied at all times, so the energy consumption was naturally much lower. He had such a good flying palace, but he couldn't afford to spend energy crystals. Lin Jun smiled bitterly and continued to cultivate. In the 4th year, Lin Jun passed the 28th floor of the sky-reaching platform. Before reaching Skywind Valley, passing the 29th floor was a sure thing. In the blink of an eye, another 6 years passed. Lin Jun's journey was already more than halfway. One day, while Lin Jun was cultivating, Chris reminded him, "Master, there's a flying palace chasing after us." Lin Jun immediately left his cultivation state and had Crazy switch to the radar screen. Behind the Sword Palace, a squarish mid-tier flying palace was constantly accelerating. It was about to catch up to Lin Jun's palace. Now that Lin Jun's Sword Palace had sealed the sword holes, it looked like an ordinary high-tier palace. Its speed was also reduced, which was why the mid-tier flying palace was catching up. Lin Jun originally thought that it was the violent ape king or the demonic corpse king chasing after him. However, looking at the palace, it didn't belong to them. Moreover, it had been more than a decade. The demonic corpse king and the others couldn't have known his location. Slow down a little more. Let me see who's coming. Crazy had the flying palace slowed down again. At 5,000 times the speed of sound, the mid-tier flying palace quickly approached and caught up with Lin Jun's flying palace. BZZT, BZZT. The radar screen flashed, and a person appeared on the screen. Hello, fellow Taoist. Lin Jun looked at this person. He was neither tall nor fat. His face was white and he looked gentle. He looked like a middle-aged scholar. However, appearance didn't represent strength. This person was a divine king expert. Moreover, he looked much stronger than the demonic corpse king and the violent ape king. Most of the time, one could analyze the owner's strength from the flying palace's grade. To be able to control a mid-tier flying palace, this person couldn't be a weakling among divine kings. This person didn't seem to have any ill intentions. Lin Jun smiled and said, "Hello, how should I address you? My surname is Bai. Others call me Nine-Tailed King." Lin Jun didn't know who Nine-Tailed King was, but Chris immediately reminded him in his mind. Master, Nine-Tailed King's original form is a nine-tailed celestial fox. He's a divine king who has been famous for hundreds of millions of years. His strength is above average among divine kings. He's not someone a low-level divine king, like the violent ape king, can compare to. Lin Jun nodded and said to Nine-Tailed King, "My surname is Lin. Others call me Ghost-Face King." "Oh, I think I've heard this name before." Nine-Tailed King thought for a while and couldn't seem to recall. However, he still said happily, "I'm heading to Skywind Valley. I didn't expect to meet you on the way. It's a long journey in the vast universe. It's fate that brought us together. I want to befriend you, so I came to ask." Haha, Nine-Tailed King is indeed a sentimental person. Since that's the case, why don't you come over for a chat? Nine-Tailed King nodded happily. "Okay, then I'll come over." Nine-Tailed King wasn't weak, but Lin Jun wasn't afraid. When he used the outer lion seal, ordinary divine kings wouldn't be able to block it. Soon, Lin Jun opened the protective barrier. Nine-Tailed King's palace landed on the deck above Lin Jun's sword palace. Lin Jun's palace was actually an extreme grade palace. It was also very large. It was more than 10 times larger than Nine-Tailed King's mid-tier palace. The middle-grade palace landed on the deck, just like the return of an aircraft carrier. Nine-Tailed King walked out of the palace and arrived in front of the temple. Chapter 12:19. "It's all right. This flying palace is just a little bigger," Lin Jun said with a smile. "TSK. It's really big. It's not like I've never seen a high-grade flying palace before, but none of them are as big as this. Look at the decorations, the workmanship. This palace has some tricks up its sleeve." Nine-Tailed King looked around for a while before he calmed down. He sized up Lin Jun from head to toe with a trace of curiosity in his eyes. "Brother Lin, I can't see through your realm." Lin Jun's mind power was very strong. Although he was only at the peak of a middle-level god, his strength had been increased by more than 50%. He did not seem to be any weaker than a god king. This feeling was very strange. One could not help but doubt the authenticity of his realm. Nine-Tailed King could not see through Lin Jun's realm. He could not see through him. "I've only cultivated some small camouflage skills. It's not worth mentioning." "Is that so?" Nine-Tailed King smiled. Suddenly, the scenery before Lin Jun changed. The surrounding environment suddenly disappeared. In its place was an extremely luxurious place. Lin Jun sat in front of a wine table. There were some beautiful women of different styles dancing in the empty space before him. Their sleeves fluttered in the wind, and their fragrance assailed his nostrils. Wind, string, and stringed instruments played one after another, producing a sound of nature. A beautiful young fox girl walked over with a tray. One could tell at a glance that the tray contained powerful equipment. "Master, there's equipment worth 10 billion here. I'm kindly offering it to you. Please accept it and leave it behind. Okay?" Her tone was gentle, but it was mesmerizing. One could not help but want to agree. This was an illusion. an illusion that could cause one to fall at any time. As long as he accepted the equipment, he would fall into Nine-Tailed King's trap. Lin Jun's eyes narrowed slightly. He reached out and accepted the equipment. Then, he performed the overlaying Nine Seals technique. With a trace of the outer Line Seal's power, he sent the equipment flying back. Scram! Roar! Accompanied by a roar from his palm, the equipment smashed into the young girl's face. The illusion was immediately shattered. Nine-Tailed King fell backward. There was a boot on his face. However, this person was pretty good. He immediately bounced up from the ground with a look of horror on his face. He was confident that he did not have many opponents among the Divine Kings. Although he could not see through Lin Jun's depth, he knew that Lin Jun was definitely not his opponent. There was no harm in probing. This was the law between warriors. The strong could do whatever they wanted. Although he had no intention of hurting Lin Jun, he just wanted to know the depth of this person. But in that brief exchange, just now, Lin Jun's unaffected mental strength was more or less enough to prove that he was a God King. And that handprint made Nine-Tailed King feel that her life was in danger. This Ghost-Faced King should have the same strength as him. Nine-Tailed King, who originally still had some sense of superiority, immediately restrained herself a lot. Lin Jun looked at the Nine-Tailed King. Elder brother Bai really has a powerful illusion ability. Those below the crystal formation realm have absolutely no resistance at all. Plus, you seem to be naturally proficient in this Tao. Even if you just stepped into the crystal formation realm, I'm afraid you will also fall for it. Younger brother Lin, it's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. Nine-Tailed King hurriedly expressed his stance awkwardly. In the end, he actually laughed thick-skinned. I knew that this won't stump little brother. It's just a joke probing. Otherwise, I wouldn't use a boot as a test subject. Even if you fell for it, at most, you'll just discover a boot under you. No other meaning. Make sure not to take it seriously. Don't take it seriously, huh? Lin Jun was very clear that Nine-Tailed King indeed had the intention of probing. This probing was to see if he was a divine king or not. If Lin Jun's mental strength was insufficient to crystal formation realm, then it was hard to say what would happen. No divine king would take a person below the divine king realm seriously. This was a common problem and not exclusive to Nine-Tailed King. It was already considered rare that he did not sense any malicious intent in his probing for the time being. But Lin Jun did not wish to fight with this person yet. Nine-Tailed King's strength was not what Violent Ape King, that Sword Divine King, could compare to. Lin Jun did not have full confidence in dealing with him. Not to mention, Nine-Tailed King's probing was already over. You should not have any other thoughts. Nine-Tailed King spoke for a while, then probed Lin Jun. Little brother Lin, where are you from? I originally came from the primordial realm, but before coming to the Sea of Constellations, I'm considered to be from the Demoness planet. Nine-Tailed King's eyes lit up. That's great. I'm also from the Demon planet. Why don't we head to Skywind Valley together? We can even return to the Demon planet together. Lin Jun nodded. That's a good idea. If we go together, we can take care of each other. We can even spend a few decades discussing cultivation on the way back. Nine-Tailed King frowned slightly. A few decades? Little brother's palace shouldn't be slow, right? Can't you speed it up a little? Nine-Tailed King came to Lin Jun's palace in hopes of reaching Skywind Valley as soon as possible. He did not expect Lin Jun to say that it would take a few decades. I can speed it up, but it will still consume energy crystals, won't it? Nine-Tailed King laughed heartily when he heard Lin Jun's reasoning. At first, he felt that it was unfair that Lin Jun already had a high-grade palace at such a young age. On top of that, his strength was outstanding. However, after hearing Lin Jun's words, his sense of superiority returned. So what if you have a high-grade palace? Perhaps it was given to you by some senior in your sect. How can you compare to a veteran divine king like me? Since he planned to ride on Lin Jun's flying palace, Nine-Tailed King naturally had to show his sincerity and apologize for his probing earlier. He patted his chest and said, "That's easy. I'll pay for Brother Lin's travel expenses. I can't just ride on your palace for free. Can I?" Lin Jun waved his hand. "How can I do that? Even though I've already added a third of it, there's still quite a bit of difference. It's not appropriate for Brother Bai to spend too much money. Hearing that Lin Jun had already added a portion of the energy crystals, Nine-Tailed King felt even more confident. His middle-grade palace consumed a lot of energy. It would cost him 30 million points to add energy crystals at once. He estimated that Lin Jun's high-grade palace would cost about 100 million points. In that case, he would only need to add 60 to 70 million points. This was nothing to him, who had been a divine king for countless years. It's fine. Brother Lin, just open up the energy storage. I feel like we've known each other for a long time. There's no need for us to waste our breath on such trivial matters. Lin Jun nodded reluctantly. Since Brother insists, I'll do as you say. Crazy, show Brother Bai the way to the energy storage. Crazy appeared on Lin Jun's shoulder. A little girl in a white dress floated up. She said to Nine-Tailed King expressionlessly, "Esteemed guest, please follow me." Nine-Tailed King slowly followed Crazy, pleased with himself. Lin Jun, on the other hand, sat on the chair with a smile and looked at the energy storage. By right, it should have been over in a minute. However, Lin Jun waited for a full 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, Lin Jun saw Nine-Tailed King walk out of the energy storage with an ashen face. His energy storage was full. Right now, Lin Jun's energy storage only had a little over 200 million energy blocks left. Nine-Tailed King had added 700 million energy blocks this time. After seeing Lin Jun, Nine-Tailed King held back for a long time before he finally said something. Chapter 1220. With Nine-Tailed King's 700 million energy crystals, Lin Jun's flying palace was finally filled to the brim with power. Now that he had traveled more than half the distance, even if he returned from Skygale Valley, he would still have a few 100 million left. The flying palace immediately accelerated and soared to the limit of sublight speed as it flew towards Skygale Valley. Nine-Tailed King no longer dared to underestimate Lin Jun after being scammed by him. His superior mentality from before was gone as he began to treat Lin Jun as an equal. Nine-Tailed King's true form was a nine-tailed celestial fox. He was heading to Skygale Valley to comprehend Wind Elemental true essence. Brother, going to Skygale Valley is not an easy task. The so-called Skygale Valley is a long passageway and a huge wind gap. It is said that at the end of the passageway is an extra-dimensional storm zone. The strongest wind force there can reach up to level 50. Even godly monarchs have a chance of dying here. Lin Jun was alarmed when he heard this. It wasn't as if he didn't understand the power of storms. For example, storms below level 20 were storms that belonged to planets. They had no effect on godly monarchs. Between level 20 and level 30, they belonged to stellar storms. Such storms could destroy all life on a planet. When the storm arrived, a person would instantly be stretched to a few 100 meters or shrink to a few centimeters. The destructive power was unimaginable. To warriors below the celestial realm, such winds were a threat. However, it wasn't enough to threaten godly monarchs. One needed spatial storms above level 30 at the very least. Spatial storms were energy turbulence in space. Only when the energy gathered to a certain extent could it threaten godly monarchs. And in Skygale Valley, the weakest winds at the periphery were level 30. Where the wind speed was the strongest, the wind speed was close to the speed of light. In such a place, even godly monarchs could be instantly blown apart, their soul dissipating. This was Nine-Tailed King's second trip to Skygale Valley, but he still didn't have any confidence in comprehending Wind Elemental true essence. It was just too difficult. The comprehension of each elemental energy was also dependent on luck. In the case of the wind element, if there was no special luck, it would be very difficult to comprehend it. In a place like the Skywind Valley, one might not even be able to comprehend it, but die. Among the energies that Lin Jun had comprehended, light, thunder, ice, and metal were the four energies that he had focused on cultivating when he was on Earth. His foundation was solid, so it was natural for him to be able to comprehend them now. He didn't understand much about the wood element, but with the help of the stellar fruit tree and the treasure-hunting tongue, he was able to understand it by chance. However, what gave him the biggest headache was actually the wind and earth elements. He had no foundation in them at all. Everything had to start from scratch. Without a doubt, this was extremely difficult. He estimated that this trip to Skygale Valley would not be short. On the 12th year of flying in the Sword Palace, Lin Jun finally passed the 29th level of the sky-piercing platform. After passing through this level, each of the 4 elements of dark matter had increased by 50. At this point, Lin Jun could already form a divine metal-type clone. Even after forming a divine metal-type clone, he still had a little left. After passing 2 more levels, he could form another one. However, Lin Jun didn't immediately form one. Firstly, the Flying Palace wasn't the best place to do so. Secondly, he had arrived at Skygale Valley. The constellation sea was filled with eternal darkness, broken terrain, and chaotic energies. As they neared Skygale Valley, the Sword Palace slowed down. Loud bangs rang out from the massive ship's hull. Some rapidly flying meteorites and other materials violently smashed into the Sword Palace, and then shattered upon impact. Little brother, we've arrived at the edge of Skygale Valley. These irregular celestial bodies are affected by the winds blowing from Skygale Valley and are flying everywhere. Lin Jun looked out of the palace. About 100 million kilometers away, there was a massive hole that looked like the sun. The howling gales appeared from within that hole. After reaching the outside, they ran amok without any rules, forming a chaotic landscape. As for the Sword Palace's radar, it detected several powerful life forms nearby. They seem to be at least quasi-god king level super experts. These people are all here to cultivate. Some have even stayed here for 100 million years. Little brother, you don't have to pay attention to them. Just focus on your cultivation. Lin Jun nodded. After a long journey of over a dozen years, they had finally arrived at Skygale Valley. It was time for him to cultivate. The Sword Palace continued to glide for a while. When it was 1,000,000 kilometers away from the entrance of Skygale Valley, the 2 of them came down from the palace. With a thought, Lin Jun sent the Sword Palace into the realm of the gods. Standing in the void, Lin Jun could feel the probing gazes coming from all directions. Perhaps it was because the Sword Palace was too eye-catching. Some of the people hiding in the shadows nearby were sizing up Lin Jun and the Nine-Tailed King. Lin Jun was calm and composed. His divine power was concealed, making it impossible for others to see through him. On the other hand, the Nine-Tailed King was used to it. As he walked, some people even recognized him. When they passed by a huge meteorite fixed by divine power, a god king of a different race with a cold expression appeared. Nine-Tailed, you're here again. His voice was like thunder. It was loud and clear. This god king was also very strong. Emperor Sky, why are you still here? Are you frustrated that you can't break through? The god king called Emperor Sky did not answer the question. Instead, he asked the Nine-Tailed King, who's the young man beside you? This is the newly promoted god king, Ghost Mask King. He's my good brother. He's very strong. Emperor Sky nodded. He did not greet Lin Jun. Instead, he returned to the back of the meteorite to cultivate. Lin Jun glanced over and said to the Nine-Tailed King, this god king is from the monarch race? That's right. I didn't expect you to know the monarch race. This old man and I have known each other for countless years. All right, he's also from the witch planet. Lin Jun did not continue asking. Instead, he gradually approached the entrance of Skygale Valley. Brother, I'll go in first. We've added each other's universes. If you encounter any problems, you can ask me at any time. I can't wait any longer. I'll go in first. Let's try to be together on the return journey. I don't want to be tricked by you for nothing. After the Nine-Tailed King finished speaking, his body suddenly accelerated. A huge nine-tailed celestial fox illusion rose behind him. He braved the violent hurricane and charged into the incomparably huge hole. Lin Jun took a deep breath. He was also in good condition at the moment. It was time for him to enter. If I want to comprehend the true essence of wind, there's no doubt that I have to head to the extra-dimensional storm Eye at the end of Skygale Valley. I wonder how far I can go with the strength of my body. Taking a step forward, Lin Jun also stepped into Skygale Valley under the scrutiny of the nearby God Kings. When Lin Zhun's body disappeared, the monarch race god King Huang Tian on the distant meteorite directly sent a message. The message was sent to the head of the 8 great hammers, Golden Hammer Lustman. Chapter 1221. In the Nether Realm, Iron Hammer Zhu Yuan, whose cultivation had reached the final stage. A pair of star-shaped hammers flew up and down, shattering the skull of a bone dragon. Hiss! Black death aura lingered around. After some inexplicable transformation, it turned into energy and was absorbed by Zhu Yuan, who. The 3 of them, Yin Jin and Tong, stood guard for him, preventing anyone from approaching him. About 15 minutes later, Iron Hammer Zhu Yuan Hu opened his eyes. Big brother, second brother, third brother. I broke through and am now a god king. The 3 of them were overjoyed as they gathered around Zhu Yuan Hu. Wang Xingba laughed, ha ha ha, this is great. The 4 of us have broken through to the god king realm. Our thousands of years of cultivation were not in vain. Zhang Huang's eyes shone with a sharp light. The 4 of us have sacrificed too much for this breakthrough. Everyone thinks that the 8 great hammers have declined. Our people have been bullied and wronged in various places. 2 of our nephews were even killed. This time, when we come out of seclusion, we will make those people pay with their blood. Zhu Yuanhu also said hatefully, that's for sure. My son's death has become the driving force for me to move forward. Otherwise, I wouldn't have broken through to the God King realm so quickly. That person called Lin Zhun, I will definitely make him suffer a fate worse than death. Lustman did not say anything for a long time. After the 3 of them vented their excitement, he slowly opened his mouth. I have another piece of good news for you. We know where Lin Zhun is. Oh, there's news so quickly. Big brother, tell us, where is he now? Lustman shared a video with them. This was taken by my friend Huang Tian in Sky Gale Valley. He said that the Nine-Tailed King brought someone called Ghostface King to Sky Gale Valley to cultivate. That should be Lin Zhun. When they saw Lin Zhun step into the entrance of Sky Gale Valley, they were all excited. Wang Xingba and Zhu Yuanhu even clamored to immediately head to Sky Gale Valley to kill Lin Zhun. Lustman shook his head. Don't be impatient. This kid just entered Skywind Valley. He won't come out without at least 100 or 200 years. During this time, 4th brother should stabilize his realm. Then we brothers will practice our joint combat skills. Zhang Huang nodded. That's right. The 4 of us brothers have been together for countless years. When our 8 great hammers was first established, we relied on our joint combat skills to challenge those above our level. That's how we gained the reputation of the 8 great hammers. When we first reached the quasi-god king realm, we relied on our joint combat skills to challenge god kings. Now that we've all advanced to the god king realm, the power of our joint combat skills must be even greater. Although Wang Xingba and Zhu Yuanhu were anxious to take revenge, they knew their priorities. They could only temporarily suppress their thoughts of going to Sky Gale Valley. Hee, Lao San, Lao Si, are you stupid? We could take the Flying Palace and set off right now. We will definitely reach Sky Gale Valley within 100 years. We can cultivate on the way. After Lao Si stabilizes his realm, he can just find a place to practice. Wang Xingba and the others suddenly understood. Because of the news of Lin Zhun's sudden appearance, they were a little confused. Lustman waved his hand, and a high-grade flying palace appeared. This flying palace was in the shape of a shuttle. Although it wasn't as big as Lin Zhun's Palace of Swords, it was still an incredible treasure. Let's go. We'll head to Sky Gale Valley now. However, we can't delay our cultivation on the way. The joint combat skills of the 4 of us are our foundation. It's also the hope of our 8 great hammers rising. Understood. Cultivate the joint combat skills well and sweep away all enemies. The 8 great hammers will definitely stand at the peak of the universe. The shuttle-shaped flying palace rose into the sky and left the Netherrealm continent, heading towards Sky Gale Valley. As Lin Zhun walked into Sky Gale Valley, the hurricane in front of him blew his hair. Sky Gale Valley was indeed worthy of its reputation. The hurricane at the entrance had already reached Force 30. This kind of hurricane that could destroy an entire planet was unable to shake Lin Zhun's body. After going through countless opportunities, Lin Jun's body strength had already reached the level of intermediate-grade equipment. His body weight was comparable to a small planet. It was just that Lin Jun didn't normally release this weight, so he looked like an ordinary person. What a strong wind. This wind can't do any harm to me. However, I didn't come here to go against the wind. I came here to comprehend the true essence of wind. Relying on my body's weight and strength won't help me comprehend the true essence of wind. I can store my weight in the divine realm and slowly comprehend it in the wind. That's the best way. With a thought, Lin Jun removed most of his body's strength. In the divine realm, his weight instantly dropped to 1,000 kilograms. How could such a weight resist the violent hurricane here? With a whoosh, Lin Jun's body was directly blown out of the entrance of Skygale Valley. If it wasn't for his body's strength being comparable to equipment, this would have been enough to turn him into dust. His body tumbled, and he was blown 1,000,000 kilometers away by the strong winds before he managed to stabilize himself. Countless gazes looked over. Some were surprised, some were disdainful, and some were mocking. Lin Jun seemed to be the first person to perform so poorly after entering this place. Some people thought that Lin Jun had advanced to the godly king realm at such a young age because his foundation was shallow. They thought that he didn't know the concept of accumulating strength and making a fool of himself. The godly king called Huang Tian chuckled. This ghost-face king always gave him an uncomfortable feeling. It was a strange feeling, but he just didn't like Lin Jun. He was very happy to see Lin Jun make a fool of himself. However, Lin Jun's path of cultivation had been filled with ridicule and abuse. These things didn't affect him at all. Just now, when he was attacked by the power of the gale, he had a slight understanding in his heart. I was too obsessed with resisting the hurricane. With my current 1,000-kilogram body weight, how can I withstand a hurricane of the level 30 level? Resisting it would be like throwing an egg against a rock. If I want to stand my ground in this hurricane, I need to know more about the circulation of wind energy and go with the flow. With that thought in mind, Lin Jun stepped on the void and took a step forward. In the blink of an eye, he was back at the entrance of Skygale Valley. This step, which contained the power of space, instantly silenced the surroundings. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This person could actually use the power of space in the sea of constellations. Just this alone was enough to shock many people. Indeed, to be able to advance to the godly king realm at such a young age, he definitely wasn't someone to be trifled with. After purposely showing off his strength, Lin Jun charged into Skygale Valley once again. This time, Lin Jun didn't choose to face it head-on. However, the result didn't change at all. He couldn't resist the hurricane at all and was instantly blown out again. Chapter 12:22. Rush in, blow out, rush in again, and tumble out again. The level 30 hurricane couldn't harm Lin Jun, but could make him return empty-handed time and time again. In this process, the divine kings who were watching the show had a slight understanding. This ghost mask king, he's trying to comprehend the true essence of wind and freely move in the wind. Although his method seems stupid, there's a reason behind it. Once he comprehends it, he'll definitely take a big step forward on the path of wind. What a strong physique. This guy doesn't seem to have achieved the body of a divine king. How can he have such strength? The people's disdain and ridicule at the beginning turned into shock and contemplation. However, Lin Jun's method wasn't necessarily suitable for others. First, one had to have an extremely strong physique to cultivate here. Although these divine kings' bodies were strong, they were greatly exhausted in the never-ending hurricane. Otherwise, they wouldn't have left Skywind Valley so often and rested outside. Lin Jun hadn't become a divine king in essence, and he wasn't a divine king's energy body. Now, it was a good thing that he could rely on his physique to cultivate forever. Everyone's opportunities were different. Others' paths might not be easy. After seeing Lin Jun fall out thousands of times without any sense of beauty, these divine kings were numb to it. Gradually, they stopped paying attention to Lin Jun's comical performance and ignored him. Everyone continued to cultivate according to their own path. Occasionally, there would be someone who suddenly wanted to try Lin Jun's method. In the end, they could only return in a sorry state. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. After 10 years, Lin Jun finally had a breakthrough. After countless experiments, Lin Jun gradually figured out a pattern of the wind element. The movement of the hurricane wasn't constant. There would always be a slight difference in the middle. One moment the wind was strong, but the next moment it might not be so strong. However, this difference was difficult to grasp, especially when one couldn't stand in the wind. It was even more difficult to grasp. Even with his aptitude and comprehension, it took him 10 years to grasp the pattern. The operation of wind is similar to the operation of water. When I was in the Earth's Immortal Generals training camp, that is, in the formation of the fruit tree, I once comprehended the flow of the river on the tree. That is, taking advantage of the current. It's just that the wind here is billions of times more violent than the water here. It's even more difficult to comprehend. However, if you grasp the rhythm of the wind speed change at every moment and adjust your strength appropriately, you'll be able to stand in the wind. Once again walking into the gale, Lin Jun immediately felt the rhythm of the wind. In his eyes, the endless gale had a strange color to it. The darker the color, the stronger the wind. A dark gust of wind blew over. Lin Jun's body made the best defense against the wind. His body was horizontal in the air, and his hands were in front of him. His entire body was like a shuttle. The points where the hands exerted force were the least resistance against the wind, and the streamlined shape allowed the wind to brush past the sides of the body. When this violent gust of wind blew past, Lin Jun wasn't blown out of the wind. Lin Jun was overjoyed when he saw that the method he had explored for many years was feasible. Seeing that the wind in the next moment was light-colored, he immediately lowered his body and took a step forward in a crawling manner. Although the wind resistance was slightly stronger, Lin Jun wasn't blown out of the wind. Another gust of wind came. Lin Jun once again maintained his shuttle form and took another step forward. After repeatedly searching for the pattern, Lin Jun gradually moved forward in the wind. When the wind changed for the 10th time, Lin Jun was blown out of the wind due to a moment of carelessness. However, this time, Lin Jun was happy. He had already grasped the pattern of the wind. He would do better next time. Some God Kings noticed that Lin Jun seemed to have made a breakthrough. After adjusting his breathing, Lin Jun entered the wind again. After learning from his previous experience, Lin Jun improved every movement of his. He couldn't have any extra postures that weren't conducive to cultivation. This time, he advanced over 100 meters before he failed. However, the next time, he advanced 1,000 meters. At a distance of 1,000 meters, the wind had reached level 31. Because of the sudden increase in wind strength, it caught him off guard and caused him to fail. Phew, it's difficult. As expected, I don't have the foundation of the wind element. It's a bit difficult to advance in the wind. In this case, it might take a few hundred years to reach the extra-dimensional wind gap. However, Lin Jun didn't care about the length of time. After finding the correct method, he would become more and more suitable to fly in the wind. He believed that one day, he would be able to soar freely by relying on his own comprehension. The long journey of comprehending the wind element began. When Lin Jun arrived 20 years ago, he had already advanced to the level 35 wind zone. At 30 years, he was at level 39. Level 40 was a hurdle that stopped him from advancing for a while. At 50 years, Lin Jun made a breakthrough in one go and directly rushed through the level 45 wind zone. At this time, he was already able to move freely in the wind zone in front of him without being attacked by the wind force. He had also seen his path clearly. As long as he could move around the extra-dimensional wind gap, he would have comprehended the true essence of the wind element. This was because the strongest wind in Skywind Valley was there. It was said that the strongest wind force there was at level 76. The wind force at level 76 was at the speed of light. It would be extremely difficult to comprehend. By the 60th year, Lin Jun had advanced to the level 49 wind zone. At the critical juncture of level 50, it was no longer possible to rely on his physical strength alone. Lin Jun began to use some methods, such as armor transformation and enchantment, to strengthen his body. The sudden change in his body made him a little uncomfortable for a while. It took him more than 10 years to adjust. At 80 years, he broke through the level 50 wind zone in one go. After that, it was like a hot knife through butter. At 95 years, Lin Jun arrived at the level 59 wind zone. However, the further he went, the more difficult it was to comprehend. According to his estimation, it would take him at least a few hundred years to reach the level 76 wind zone. Meanwhile, the Divine Kings outside Skywind Valley also felt that they hadn't seen Lin Jun for a long time. On the 97th year since Lin Jun entered Skygale Valley, a flying palace arrived at the entrance of Skygale Valley. Ha ha ha! Lusman, you're not fast enough. It's been almost 100 years, and you've only just arrived. The monarch Divine King, Huang Tian, met the 4 leaders of the 8 hammers at the entrance. Lusman and Huang Tian hugged. Then their eyes shone. We flew all the way from the Netherrealm. It's already very good to be able to reach here in 100 years. You should know that just the energy blocks alone cost a few hundred million. If your information is inaccurate, you have to pay me back. Huang Tian laughed. It's absolutely true. The person you're looking for is still in Skywind Valley. He glanced at Lusman and the other 3 and was secretly surprised. Chapter 1223. Huang Tian's strength was considered above average among the godly monarchs. He was even slightly stronger than the 9-tailed king. In the past, he and Lusman were on par. Apart from Lusman, he didn't think much of the others. Back then, Zhang Huang and the others had yet to break through to the godly monarch realm. He never expected that after a few thousand years, Zhang Huang and the other 2 would become godly monarchs. Moreover, when the 4 of them stood together, he felt that they were much stronger than ordinary godly monarchs. They actually reminded him of a ruler. Huang Tian didn't express his shock. He said, Lusman, although your enemy is right in front of you, it won't be easy for you to deal with him. If it were a few decades ago, it would have been easier. Ghostface King would often fall out of the wind, and there would be many opportunities to kill him. However, in recent decades, he has rarely fallen out. The last time he fell out was 7 or 8 years ago. If you want to wait, you might have to be mentally prepared. It might take a few decades. Lusman sneered at Huang Tian's words. Who says we want to wait? We came here to kill him. The 4 of us will enter in a moment. We won't wait another day. Huang Tian looked at the arrogant Lusman and couldn't help but say, Lusman, if you can advance in Skygale Valley, I believe that your second brother has a certain level of strength as well. However, it can't be that the 4 of you have the strength to enter Skygale Valley as you please, right? Huang Tian had cultivated there for many years. He was very familiar with the wind forces inside. While it was true that they could go very far with their strength, it was impossible for them to reach the end. Level 50 wind forces were a huge hurdle. Godly monarchs who didn't comprehend the wind element couldn't even pass through the level 50 wind region. Those who could pass through level 50 were the more elite godly monarchs. Lusman should be able to pass through, but Zhang Huang might not. The other 2 didn't stand a chance. Upon hearing Huang Tian's question, Lusman smiled at him and patted his shoulder. Brother, today is different from the past. The 4 of us from the 8 great hammers have come here today to seek revenge. I'm afraid a mere Skygale Valley won't be able to stop us. At this moment, Emperor Sky smiled and said, Don't be so sure. I heard a rumor that this Ghostface King is a pre-selected disciple of a mysterious ruler. You probably don't know this, right? Lusman was stunned. He really did not know the origin of Ghostface King. In fact, he did not even bother to investigate because he did not think it was necessary. If it was in the past, he would have seriously considered Huang Tian's words. After all, a sovereign's disciple couldn't be messed around with. But today his thoughts were different. Not to mention that he was only a pre-selected disciple. Even if he was a direct disciple, could it offset his crimes? I, Lusman, will say these words. Today, even if a sovereign pleads on my behalf, it's useless. I won't give anyone face. His voice was very loud, and it spread through the surrounding starry sky. Everyone heard it. People thought that the 8 great hammers people were arrogant, but it was undeniable that the other party was very powerful. Lusman did it for revenge, but more importantly, it was to establish his might. He wanted to use the opportunity of killing Lin Jun to announce to everyone that the rise of the 8 great hammers was unstoppable. After speaking, Lusman waved at the 3 of them and said, "3 brothers, it's time for us to take the stage. Today, we will use Ghostface King Lin Jun's blood as a sacrifice to our 2 nephews' souls in heaven." A vast golden aura rose from Lusman's body. Zhang Huang's body was shining with silver light. Wang Xingba's body was also emitting a bright yellow aura. Zhu Yuanhu's aura was like stars in the night sky. It was the star iron. The 4 of them stood together. The golden, silver, copper, and iron aura was so dense that no one could approach them. It formed an iron wall. Ha! Let's see if the wind of Sky Gale Valley can blow away our iron wall. The 4 of them strode into Sky Gale Valley and disappeared from everyone's sight. Emperor Sky waited for a while at the back. When the 4 of them were not blown out, he knew that they would definitely meet Ghostface King Lin Jun. What kind of cultivation technique did these 4 fellas cultivate? Look at the powerful gold and earth elemental energy. Even from far away, I can feel the weight of the stars. It's definitely a powerful combination technique. That Ghostface King should be finished. When Lusman and the other 3 entered Sky Gale Valley, the gold and earth elemental energy almost condensed into a solid form. It formed an arc-shaped shield in front of the 4 of them and split the wind. Most of the wind was dissipated, and the remaining wind couldn't affect the 4 of them at all. They didn't purposely reduce their weight like Lin Jun. Their combined weight was even heavier than the stars. Lusman laughed and said, "Awesome. I've suppressed it for thousands of years. Today, I can finally release it. I really want to see Lin Jun's face later. When I find him, I'll break his bones one by one. Chuang I'm here to take revenge for you." The 4 of them moved very quickly and quickly passed through the level 40 wind zone. After reaching level 40, their speed slowed down a little, but they were still moving forward. After reaching level 45, they finally slowed down to their normal speed. After reaching level 50, they also felt a lot of pressure. A storm above level 50 could blow a planet out of its orbit and even cause a planet to collapse. Even if their weight was comparable to a planet, they still had to carefully move forward. I didn't expect Ghostface King to be able to reach the wind zone beyond level 50. Everyone, be careful. The auras on their bodies became thicker. Although the surface area didn't increase, the quality kept increasing. When they reached level 55, it became even more difficult for them to move forward. "Big brother, use the goal mountain. I can't walk anymore." Iron Hammer Zhu Yuanhu was the first to give up. The only reason Zhu Yuanhu could reach the level 55 zone by relying on brute force was because of his teammate's Iron Bastion. Although Iron Bastion could still hold on, Zhu Yuanhu, who had just become a God King, was starting to run out of divine power. Lusman looked back. Zhang Huang was fine, Wang Xingba was pale, and Zhu Yuanhu was about to fall. Knowing that they couldn't back out now, Lusman immediately waved at them. The 3 of them all came to Lusman's side and whistled in unison. A few rays of metal aura rose into the sky like 4 dragons. They intertwined in the air and then condensed. Refined gold, mithril, purple copper, black iron, and earth that was heavier than metal condensed into a small mountain in the air. The material density of this small mountain had undergone an extremely high degree of compression. This mountain was equivalent to an entire galaxy. The hurricanes around them were as high as force 56, but they couldn't shake the small mountain at all. Ha ha! Who would have thought that the 4 of us would obtain a sovereign's inheritance? This small mountain was refined from a galaxy. Winds below the speed of light can't move it at all. Let's see where Lin Jun can run this time. The gold mountain appeared and blocked all the wind. The 4 of them immediately sped up and rushed to the level 59 wind zone in a short period of time. When they arrived, they saw the person they were looking for. Chapter 1224. Lin Jun's training in the wind had also reached a crucial moment. Without the foundation of the wind element, he had spent nearly 100 years to comprehend it. Finally, he had gained something. In the wind, there was not a single bit of extra movement, not a single mistake. When the wind blew at 1,000 times the speed of sound, he was able to capture the slightest difference and make the most efficient and accurate judgment. His understanding of the wind had reached an extremely high level. I have no problem rushing through the level 60 region. However, after level 70, I'm afraid it will still be difficult. To truly comprehend the essence of the wind, one must not be affected by the wind and turn into the wind. However, how can I do that? In the level 59 region, Lin Jun had been pondering over this question for a long time. However, he still could not come up with an answer. Below level 60, the wind was 1,000 times the speed of sound. He estimated that after level 60, it would be sublight speed wind. Lin Jun had some confidence in resisting sublight speed wind. However, after level 70, it would definitely be sublight speed wind. Lin Jun knew that he could not resist sublight speed wind for now. Just as he was pondering, a malicious aura suddenly approached him from behind. Lin Jun turned around abruptly. His pupils instantly shrank. Someone was coming. For divine kings. The four of them were clad in gold, silver, copper, and iron radiance. Above them was a mountain range. The weight of the mountain range was simply indescribable. The wind at 1,000 times the speed of sound could not shake it at all. One must know that the wind speed here could even shatter a planet. However, the mountain range was actually able to resist it. This was simply inconceivable. Although Lin Jun had never seen the four of them before, he could tell who they were just by looking at their aura. The four leaders of the 8 great hammers each wielded a pair of hammers. Lin Jun immediately stood up in the wind. His body only needed to sway slightly to gain a foothold in the wind. He held the jackdaw sword in his hand. He knew that these people did not come with good intentions. These people definitely did not come here to greet him. After seeing Lin Jun, Wang Xingba and Zhu Yuanhu's eyes flashed with hatred. The four of them took out their weapons at the same time. With 8 huge war hammers in hand, the battle was on the verge of breaking out. Devil Mask King Lin Jun, 8 great hammers. Wang Xingba took the lead and pointed his hammer at Lin Jun. Bastard, since you are a deity king, why are you bullying the weak? You killed my son, Wang, Chong, and many of the 8 great hammer disciples on the demon planet? Lin Jun snorted coldly from his nostrils. Martial artists don't need so many reasons to kill. They can do it as long as there's a reason. If you don't even know this, you've lived in vain. Good. It seems that reasoning with you won't work. Since you want to talk about the rules of a martial artist, then I'll let you have a deep understanding of the rules today. Wang Xingba knocked his hammers against each other. He didn't care about Lussman and the others and took the lead to charge towards Lin Jun. The golden light covering the golden mountain continued to help him resist the impact of the gale. Lin Jun didn't say anything else. He swung Jackdaw and charged at Wang Xingba. Jackdaw and Wang Xingba's hammers collided, and sparks flew in the air. These hammers weren't simple either. They were actually high-grade equipment. In fact, all of their hammers were high-grade equipment. It was just that Lussman's hammers were of a higher quality. Lin Jun felt his palms going numb. Wang Xingba had a heavy weapon and was at an advantage in close combat. Wang Xingba's strength should be above the violent Ape King. Additional gold. With a thought, Lin Jun covered Jackdaw with a layer of gold, and it immediately reached the peak of high-grade equipment. Abyss. Wang Xingba's sword slashed through the wind. Using his understanding of the wind, the sword rapidly attacked. Wang Xingba blocked with the hammer in his left hand and counterattacked with the hammer in his right hand. Lotus Bloom. A lotus flower suddenly bloomed in the path of his right hammer, causing it to change its trajectory. Wang Xingba's hammer missed. Lin Jun's move succeeded. He used the Acalanthus seal that he had prepared beforehand on Jackdaw. Then, he attacked again with lightning speed. Wang Xingba's lethality doubled. It was like a thunderbolt on a clear day as it exploded in front of Wang Xingba. The ear-piercing sound of metal clashing was ear-piercing. Wang Xingba held the hammer with one hand and couldn't block Lin Jun's lightning-fast attack. He staggered backward and seemed to be in a mess. The sword in Lin Zhen's hand turned into sword radiance. Wang Xingba couldn't tell if it was real or fake. Then, he attacked again. The chilling sword chi was about to kill. Clang! Wang Xingba's sword slashed down, and a pair of hammers blocked Lin Zhen's path of attack. It turned out that Iron Hammer Zhu Yuanhu had joined the battle. Lin Zhen, Zhu Chuang, who you killed in the Mirror Lake continent, is my son. You shall pay with your life. Ha ha ha. After beating up the young, the old comes. Come on then. This time, I'll eliminate the root of the problem so that you won't come looking for trouble with me. Lin Zhen wasn't afraid at all. Through this battle, his understanding of the wind had improved. Moreover, this Zhu Yuanhu's standard didn't seem to be on par with the Violent Ape King. There was no harm in having one more. The Fire Crane Divine Sword appeared in Lin Zhen's hand. He brandished the two swords and fought against the two God Kings. Sparks flew everywhere as the three of them fought amidst the violent wind. Golden lotuses bloomed continuously in the air, causing Wang Xingba and Zhu Yuanhu to be restrained. They were actually suppressed by Lin Zhen. Great Vajra Wheel Imprint. Rakshasa, the sword that was imbued with stacked combat techniques, broke the balance of the battle once again. Zhu Yuanhu groaned as blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He staggered backward. Lin Zhen twisted his body in the air and teleported away from Wang Xingba's attack. The fire crane in his hand slashed down again. Seeing that Zhu Yuanhu was about to lose his life, Zhang Huang made his move. The pair of plum blossom silver hammers in his hand stirred up wind and thunder. He was much stronger than Wang Xingba and Zhu Yuanhu. Lin Zhen already knew that Zhang Huang was going to join the battle. His sneak attack on Zhu Yuanhu was just a feint. He wanted to bait Zhang Huang into joining the battle. The sword that was slashing towards Zhu Yuanhu suddenly turned towards Zhang Huang. Outer Lion Seal. Purgatory. A dull roar echoed in the air. The sword that was imbued with 3 times the power faced Zhang Huang head-on. Zhang Huang was also quite powerful. The battle hammers in his hand were imbued with combat techniques. Lin Zhen's strongest sword wasn't able to kill him. However, it was able to push him back. After pushing Zhang Huang back, Lin Zhen blocked Wang Xingba, who was trying to save Zhu Yuanhu. At the same time, he activated his spiritual power and controlled the sword. The vermilion bird broke through the air. He still wanted to kill Zhu Yuanhu first. He wanted to kill as many as he could. Zhang Huang and Wang Xingba no longer had the ability to save Zhu Yuanhu. They let out mournful cries as Zhu Yuanhu was about to die. Impudent. A golden light flashed, and the vermilion bird was sent spinning back. It was the eldest brother, Lusman, who had made his move. Lusman's face was ashen. He never expected that the ghost Mass King, who didn't seem to be the strongest among the God Kings, would be able to kill one of them under the joint attack of his 3 younger brothers. He would never allow this to happen. Chapter 1225. Seeing that Lusman had joined the battle just in time, Lin Zhen felt that it was a pity. He was definitely not Lusman's match. Even Zhang Huang's absolute strength was stronger than his. However, Lin Zhen was a combat genius. He could always catch his opponent off guard and turn the tables around. Others relied on their strength to fight, but he relied on his strength and brains to fight. If Lusman had not joined the battle in time, Lin Zhen would definitely have been able to kill Zhu Yuanhu. Unfortunately, he only had one chance. Lusman had joined the battle, and the difference in strength between them was too great. He could not continue fighting. If he continued, he would be risking his life. Lin Zhen recalled the vermilion bird with his mental power. Wielding his 2 swords, he charged into the level 60 wind zone. At this moment, he no longer controlled his weight. He released it as much as he wanted and turned his armor into gold. It was time to run for his life. Lusman and the others had ugly expressions on their faces. They had come here full of confidence and didn't put Lin Zhen in their eyes at all. However, they had almost failed miserably. If Zhu Yuanhu was killed here, they wouldn't be able to execute their joint combat technique. Damn it, we almost got tricked by this kid. Everyone, be careful. We can't make the same mistake this time. The heavy force field on the Golden Mountain pressed down, blocking the impact of the wind. The few of them gave chase resolutely. This Golden Mountain was refined by a ruler using the stars of an entire galaxy. Every grain of sand and soil was a star. The entire Golden Mountain gathered the weight of an entire galaxy. The wind below the speed of light could not destroy it. With the Golden Mountain, the few of them chased Lin Jun into the level 60 wind zone. Lin Jun's understanding of the wind was much stronger than theirs. He ran in front while they chased after him with the strength of the Golden Mountain. It was like a chase on ice. The person in front was skating forward while the person behind was riding an icebreaker. It was hard to say who was faster. Just as Lin Jun had expected, the level 60 astral wind had already reached sublight speed. This kind of wind was very rare even in the universe. Even ordinary stars would instantly turn to dust in front of it. Relying on his understanding of the wind, Lin Jun advanced quickly. Level 61, level 62. However, no matter how fast he advanced, the pursuers behind him weren't slow either. The 8 great hammers and 4 other people's gold mountains were enough to withstand the wind. With 1 chasing and 1 fleeing, they actually arrived at the level 69 wind zone. At this point, Lin Jun already felt that he had reached his limit. The wind speed here was already at the limit of sublight speed. He was very sure that as long as he took another step forward, he would reach the speed of light. What kind of concept was it when the wind moved at the speed of light? That was a terrifying thing that could destroy everything. Even the 8 hammers of Jinshan would not be able to withstand it for more than a few seconds. However, Lin Jun had no way out. If he left this wind gap, then even if he couldn't escape, at the very least, it would be wishful thinking for him to come back here to cultivate. The 100 years he had spent here would be wasted. It was not as simple as a waste. Failing to cultivate would leave a psychological shadow. Therefore, Lin Jun couldn't retreat, but he couldn't win either. The only way was to continue forward. After entering the level 70 wind zone, the 8 great hammers would not be able to catch up. Seeing Lin Jun stop, Lussman and the others also stopped, panting. Although the Gold Mountain was good, it was very difficult to control it. Furthermore, they had to move forward against the wind. Even if the 4 godly monarchs worked together, it was still quite a burden. Huff huff, why aren't you running anymore? Do you know that the speed of light wind zone is ahead? As long as you dare to enter, you won't survive. Are you going to beg for mercy now? Unfortunately, it's too late. Lussman said to the people behind him, "You guys control the Gold Mountain. Watch me get rid of this kid." Lussman was very confident. His strength was at the top of the godly monarchs. Dealing with Lin Jun was definitely not a problem. Swinging the Sun Moon Flash Golden Hammer in his hand, Lussman charged forward fiercely. In his opinion, even if Lin Jun used the Outer Line Seal, it would be impossible for him to defeat him in a head-on battle. However, he never expected that what welcomed him would be a revolving black hole. Lin Jun actually used the black hole beast transformation at a time like this. Lussman was quite knowledgeable. He was also afraid of the black hole beast. Although he was strong, he couldn't guarantee that his divine power was twice as strong as Lin Jun's. Facing the black hole, he instantly lost the courage to attack. Gold Mountain, protect me. The 3 godly monarchs controlled the Gold Mountain at the same time. They wanted to block Lin Jun's black hole and create a chance for Lussman to escape. However, their efforts were in vain. Lin Jun's black hole was only a feint. If he used it recklessly under such circumstances, he wouldn't be able to block the combined attacks of the 3 godly monarchs and the wind, let alone devouring Lussman. After scaring Lussman away, he turned around and dove into the level 70 wind zone. Lussman rolled twice in a sorry state. However, he saw Lin Jun running away. Scram! Chase after him! Zhang Huang grabbed Lussman. "Big brother, don't be rash. Our Gold Mountain can't withstand the level 70 wind zone. Lin Jun dared to enter here. As long as he doesn't comprehend the true essence of wind, he's dead for sure. There's no need for us to die with him." Lussman's face turned green and red. He only managed to calm down after a long time. He didn't know if Lin Jun was dead or not, but he knew that if they continued to stay here, they would definitely die when their divine power couldn't support the Gold Mountain anymore. Damn thing, in all these years, no one has ever made me, Lustman, lose so much face. Lin Jun, you better not die here. Otherwise, I won't have the chance to kill you personally. Let's retreat first. Lustman led the 3 godly monarchs and left the wind zone with the Gold Mountain. They headed towards the exit. The wind was right on their way back, so they were very fast. After a short while, they had already walked out of the windy area. After they left, Huang Tian walked over with a smile. How was it, Lustman? Looks like you killed the enemy successfully. That brat didn't trouble you, right? Lustman's eyelids twitched. Mind your own business. Don't talk too much. Huang Tian was stunned. Then, he knew that Lustman and the rest had failed. Lin Jun was actually able to escape from the combined attacks of the 8 hammers. How'd he do it? Lustman and the rest went to a nearby meteorite to rest and recover their divine power. Lustman was still unwilling to give up. He directly contacted his friend from the Dimensional Universe Corporation. He wanted to investigate carefully to see if Lin Jun's dimensional universe was completely destroyed. If it was completely destroyed, he was dead. If it wasn't destroyed and was only shut down, he might still be alive. His friend was, of course, a godly monarch. With his relationship with Lustman, he could even investigate with the authority of a godly monarch. However, the result of the investigation was that there was no comet. Lustman couldn't believe it. There were 2 possibilities for there to be no comet. One was that the other party's authority was too high, and his friend didn't dare to leak the information. This was the most likely possibility. The other possibility was that his friend had used this method to pass the information to Lustman. It was better not to provoke someone like Lin Jun. He was definitely still alive. Otherwise, the result would be death. No matter how high the authority was, no one would care if he died. Chapter 1226. After entering the level 70 wind zone, Lin Jun immediately felt the power of the lightspeed gale. The wind could no longer be distinguished by the naked eye. Even if one could feel the subtle changes in the wind speed, there was no time to adjust. The only way was to resist it. However, Lin Jun dared enter the lightspeed wind zone because he had something to rely on. That was the top-grade equipment, mixed yuan armor. The silver armor appeared under his skin and blocked most of the wind. A top-grade equipment was indeed a top-grade equipment. Even the lightspeed gale could not destroy it head-on. Lin Jun's body was blocked by the armor, so the damage he suffered was much less. But even so, this power was hard to bear. Lin Jun felt as if his bones were about to break apart in an instant. What a strong wind. My mixed yuan armor has blocked almost 90% of it, but it's still difficult to withstand. Lin Jun immediately let the lotus flower bloom above his head and continued to block the attack of the gale. In this way, he could barely block the attack of the gale. However, this consumed a lot of Lin Jun's divine power. It was like a person continuously facing lightspeed attacks without rest. Even if he could temporarily block it, it would only be for a while. No matter how strong a person was, they would be drain dry by this consumption. In a short 10 seconds, Lin Jun's divine power was almost depleted by 1/10. Even with his recovery speed, it could not be replenished. If this continued, he would definitely die in this gale in 3 minutes at most. 3 minutes? I only have 3 minutes. Lin Jun had changed from his black hole beast form to his human form to avoid the stronger wind. However, in the face of this unreasonable lightspeed gale, he was helpless. There was no need to use the mysterious yellow pagoda. It would only increase the burden on his divine power. Transfiguration was useless here. No matter how he dodged, he could not avoid the wind. Damn it, the speed of light is the limit of speed. It's impossible to completely dodge it. Only when your speed exceeds the speed of light can you dodge it. Otherwise, you can't dodge it no matter what. At the critical moment of life and death, Lin Jun thought of this. However, it was also because of this that an idea flashed in his mind. Yes, if my speed exceeds the speed of light, then the wind won't be able to harm me, and I'll have enough time to comprehend the true essence of the wind here. Faster than the speed of light. Faster than the speed of light. How can I exceed the speed of light? This was a difficult topic. It was a problem that countless people had researched without any results. It was easier said than done for Lin Jun to grasp it in a short time. However, at this critical moment, Lin Jun's mind became even clearer. He could vaguely remember that in his previous life, when he was on Earth, he had seen a piece of historical information. A scientist suggested that they were studying the storms in the universe. According to what they knew, the largest storm reached level 77, and its speed exceeded the speed of light by 20%. Many people knew about this type of storm. It was a black hole storm. The black hole erupted, and death ripples spread out. Even light couldn't escape the range of the death ripples. To be able to prevent light from escaping, the most important thing was that the speed of the death ripples had to be faster than the speed of light. Otherwise, if the speed of the death ripples was on par with the speed of light, it would be impossible to catch up. This problem was very far away. If it wasn't for this moment, Lin Jun might never remember it. However, he remembered now. Moreover, it was clear that some of the research of this scientist was correct. The largest wind zone here was only level 76, and it was still the wind at the speed of light. It did not exceed the speed of light because this wind gap was not a black hole. If it were someone else, it would be useless even if they knew this problem. Where would they find a black hole in such a hurry? However, Lin Jun could do it. He was a black hole beast, the creator of black holes. The death ripples represented death to others, but to him, it was a safety umbrella. The only problem now was how to make the black hole erupt the death ripples at his body. Got it. My black hole, folding black hole. Back when Lin Jun was in the new territories, he had faced a black hole directly. As a result, his black hole had a special ability, which was to create a small black hole from a distance. However, this ability was completely impractical in battle. As time passed, Lin Jun had forgotten about it. However, the current situation was suitable. As long as Lin Jun could create a small black hole from a distance, mix it with the wind, and release the death ripples at himself, it would be the wind that exceeded the speed of light. This wind was Lin Jun's lifeline. At the thought of this, Lin Jun's endurance was almost at its limit. The lotus flower above his head was on the verge of collapse. After all, this chaos green lotus was not complete. There's almost no wind energy in it, so it could not withstand this gale for long. However, it was different now. There was a solution. Lin Jun let out a long roar and moved his mind. A black hole appeared in the gale in the distance. Come, my black hole, spit out your fiercest storm at your master. The black hole in the distance contracted and expanded, and the death ripples shrouded everything. The roaring wind was enveloped by the death ripples, and instantly formed a death storm that swept through the surrounding space. Lin Jun himself was in the core of this space, safe and sound. He was the one who released the death ripples. Of course, it would not affect him. As a result, the wind within it lost its lethality to him. The timing was just right. If it had been a few seconds later, Lin Jun would not have been able to hold on. His almost exhausted divine power finally had a chance to recover, and it began to recover rapidly. Lin Jun even thought maliciously that if the people from the 8 great hammers chased after him, this wind that exceeded the speed of light by 20% would definitely turn them into ashes. Unfortunately, the people from the 8 great hammers were not that stupid. Not everyone could come to the wind zone at the speed of light. With Lin Jun's divine power recovery speed, it was still possible for him to maintain the operation of the small black hole. The surrounding super violent wind not only gave Lin Jun a perfect opportunity to comprehend, but also provided him with the best shelter. He did not have to worry about being disturbed by anyone. Wind, I finally have this opportunity. As long as I can comprehend the mystery of the wind at the speed of light, it is equivalent to me comprehending the true essence of the wind. I will be one step closer to the perfection of the chaos green lotus. At this moment, Lin Jun forgot everything. He stayed in this wind zone and began to comprehend the mystery of the wind. Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, another 100 years had passed. Chapter 12:27. Over the past 100 years, Lin Jun did not sleep or rest. Finally, he gained some insight. He used his sensitive sense of touch and perception. He even probed with his mental strength to detect any changes in the wind. After decades of accumulation, Lin Jun finally attempted to walk out of the black hole's range to experience the power of the wind at the speed of light. The moment he left the black hole, he immediately suffered a blow of failure. Gaining insight and putting into practice were two completely different concepts. Even if your mind could react, your body's reaction speed would still not be able to keep up. Thankfully, he had the primordial chaos armor and the lotus flower protecting him. He did not die immediately. After failing, Lin Jun returned to the black hole to recuperate before coming out to try again. He came out again, failed again, and returned again. Every failure was a process of gaining insight. After all, with the black hole as a protective umbrella, Lin Jun could stay here indefinitely to try again. By summarizing the reasons for each failure, Lin Jun would be able to do better the next time. This repeated process continued for another 50 years. It was only when Lin Jun entered the wind zone for the second 100 years that he succeeded for the first time. On the 200th year, Lin Jun persisted in the wind for a minute. Suddenly, his mind was enlightened. At this moment, the wind around him seemed to no longer be violent. He could clearly feel every single movement and difference in the wind. Even if the wind was moving at the speed of light, it did not maintain the speed of light all the time. There would always be minute details that he could capture. In the past, he had grasped this rhythm to survive in the wind. But at this moment, the wind did not seem to harm him. Lin Jun was overjoyed. He attempted to open the lotus flower, but he did not feel any harm from the wind. He even removed the primordial chaos armor. Without it, Lin Jun could fall to the wind at any time. But this time he succeeded. Even without the protection of the primordial chaos armor, the wind did not pose any threat to him. At this moment, Lin Jun was the wind. Ha! Ha ha ha! Lin Jun let out a string of laughter. He had been in the wind zone for 200 years. In addition to the cost of traveling to Skywind Valley, a total of 300 years had passed. On Earth, this was like the change of dynasty. The changes of several eras passed in his comprehension. At this moment, he had finally grasped the true essence of wind. No wonder Lin Jun was so happy. The comprehension of the wind element was very important to him. Unlike water, light, lightning, and other elements, he was not proficient in the wind element. It could be said that he was second only to the earth element, which he knew nothing about. The other types of energy were easy to comprehend, but this one was too difficult. If it weren't for Lin Jun's mixed yuan armor, chaotic green lotus, and black hole, he would have died in the wind, let alone comprehending it. It was precisely because of this that Lin Jun was able to repeatedly attempt to cultivate. After countless attempts, how could he not comprehend? 300 years of hard work had finally paid off. Lin Jun was ecstatic. Wonderful! I finally mastered the element of wind. I can absolutely take advantage of this opportunity to create yet another divine clone. Lin Jun had been planning to find a chance to create a divine metal-type clone, but he hadn't found a suitable opportunity. Now, however, creating a metal-type clone wasn't suitable. Only the wind-type clone was the best choice. Lin Jun was like a fish in water. He swam through the wind for a while, and then began to train within Skywind Valley. The howling wind blew over. The chaotic green lotus within Lin Jun's body bloomed, and the boundless wind poured in. Above the chaotic green lotus, a person completely identical to Lin Jun was slowly taking form. In a short period of time, the divine wind-type clone was completely formed. The god of wind, Lin Jun. His long hair fluttered in the wind, and after appearing in the air, he bowed towards Lin Jun. Greetings, true body. You and I are one. No need to stand on ceremony. The divine wind-type clone nodded, then returned to Lin Jun's body. After entering the deity realm, the divine wind-type clone automatically found a leaf of the chaotic green lotus and landed on it. By now, for divine clones were resting on the 8 leaves of the chaotic green lotus. They were lightning-type, light-type, wood-type, and wind-type. Aside from these 4 divine clones, There is also the divine water-type clone that was guarding the Starfall Lake in the primordial realm, as well as the metal-type divine clone that Lin Jun had never had the chance to form. If these two divine clones were to appear, then he would only be missing the earth-type and fire-type clones. Phew, I'm not worried about the fire-type, but who knows when I'll be able to form the earth-type. To me, the earth-type is a bit harder to form than the wind-type. According to Crazy's instructions, I should return to the Fiend Planet. After acquiring the divine wind clone, Lin Jun had another enormous benefit, and that was that his divine power had increased by yet another level. Lin Jun's original body had 11 million units of divine power. Now that his 4 divine clones had gathered, each divine clone could provide Lin Jun with 650,000 units of divine power. For divine clones provided him with 6 million units of divine power. Adding on the divine power of his original body, after fusing with Lin Jun's divine power, his divine power had reached 71 million units. When his domain of God was activated, it could provide Lin Jun with 76 million units of divine power. In total, it was close to 5 million units of divine power. As for Lin Jun's primal chaos green lotus, it could originally reduce the waste of divine power for Lin Jun by 56%. Now that he had comprehended the wind type, this value had become a reduction of the waste. It was equivalent to an increase. As such, if Lin Jun used all of his divine power, it would be equivalent to 3 million units of divine power. This value was already considered above average among God Kings. For example, Violent Ape King, Demonic Corpse King, and Zhu Yuanhu, their divine power could barely reach 10 million units. They were at the bottom of the God Kings. For example, Wang Xingba's divine power was between 11 million and 12 million units. He was considered below average. For example, Zhang Huang's divine power was around 13 million units. He was considered above average. For example, the Nine-Tailed King's divine power was between 14 million and 15 million units. She was similar to Lin Jun's current divine power and was considered above average. As for Lustman, his divine power was definitely above 15 million to 20 million units. This range was considered above average. Lin Jun was currently inferior to him. However, how long had Lustman cultivated? How long had Lin Jun cultivated? If Lin Jun was given some time, surpassing Lustman would only be a matter of minutes. Of course, there were also some peak God Kings whose divine power exceeded 20 million units. They were already close to the level of a ruler. It wasn't easy to compare them. The crux of the problem was that Lin Jun still hadn't truly become a God King. After comprehending the wind type, with my current strength and spatial movement technique, even if I can't defeat the 8 sledgehammers, I definitely won't be injured by them. Let's see if these people are still blocking me. Chapter 1228. Arriving at the exit of Sky Gale Valley, the first person Lin Jun saw was Huang Tian. This person was a regular here. He seemed to like cultivating here and was still here even after hundreds of years. However, the 8 sledgehammers were nowhere to be seen. When Huang Tian saw Lin Jun, he was stunned. Then, a hint of mockery appeared in his eyes. Hee, Ghostface King, long time no see. What's wrong? Do you have some kind of information channel? I know that you came out of Skywind Valley less than a year after Lustman and the others left. Could it be that someone tipped you off? Hearing that the 8 sledgehammers had left, Lin Jun was slightly relieved. Although he was confident that he wouldn't be killed, the 4 Divine Kings weren't easy to deal with, especially when they seemed to have some kind of joint combat technique. It would be very difficult. Lin Jun glanced at Huang Tian. I don't think anyone is better than you at spreading information. Don't tell me you don't know why the 8 sledgehammers came here. Lin Jun could more or less figure out the reason for the 8 sledgehammers' sudden arrival. It couldn't have escaped from the person in front of him. Huang Tian sneered. Looks like you're not too stupid. But so what if you know? Lin Jun exhaled deeply. He hadn't met the 8 sledgehammers. This Huang Tian wasn't weak either. At the very least, he was slightly stronger than Silverhammer Zhang Huang. He felt that this person was even stronger than Nine-Tailed. At this point, a battle was unavoidable. A sword appeared in Huang Tian's hand. Seeing this sword, Lin Zhun's heart skipped a beat. It was actually the Thunder Gull of the 18 divine swords. Thunder Gull was a lightning-type sword among the 9 divine swords. Lin Zhun was used to using Jackdaw, but Flamingo and Vermilion Bird weren't. If he could obtain this Thunder Gull, his combat power would increase. When Jackdaw appeared in Lin Zhun's hand, Huang Tian's eyes lit up. Oh my, what a coincidence. I didn't expect you to have this. If I had known, I would have taken you down long ago. Looks like we have to fight today. That's exactly what I wanted to tell you. Lin Zhun did not back down either. Emperor Sky was the strongest opponent he had ever faced, and today's battle was a good opportunity to test the results of his cultivation during this period. The two of them rose into the air at the same time, ready to fight. At this moment, a figure appeared in Sky Gale Valley. This person was none other than Ninetails. When Ninetails came out, she saw that Lin Zhun was about to fight with Huang Tian. She rushed over and shouted, "Old brother Lin, don't be rash. You mustn't fight with Huang Tian." Lin Zhun stopped and asked Ninetails why. "Little brother, you don't know. This Huang Tian isn't an ordinary person. He is the Emperor race's old ancestor, the great-grandson of the Azure Sky Sovereign." Azure Sky, do you know of him? Lin Zhun was stunned for a moment. He seemed to have heard of Azure Sky before, especially when Ninetail mentioned that Imperial Sky was a monarch race. Lin Zhun recalled some things. Back then, in the great battle between the Primordial Realm and the monarch race, the monarch race's monarch was called Zhu Tian, and among the Zhu Tian's ancestors were Azure Sky and Huang Tian. Azure Sky was the first monarch race's monarch race. It was said that his strength was ridiculously strong, and he was the one who created the glory of the monarch race. Huang Tian was also the one who carried forward the tradition of Azure Sky. The monarch race reached the peak in his hands. These two people were once the leaders of the endless battlefield, commanding demons and ghosts, and becoming enemies with the races on the ground in the primordial realm. These legendary figures only existed in Lin Zhun's vague memories in the past. He did not expect to see the real Huang Tian today. Huang Tian was already a powerhouse among the godly kings, and Azure Sky was even a sovereign. This was something he did not expect. Unknowingly, Lin Zhun had already reached a considerable height. He was probably also a legend in the new territory's primordial realm now. No wonder he was a little annoyed with Huang Tian. This person was from the monarch race, so of course he would be annoyed. Back in the new territories, on the Star of Divine Punishment, Lin Zhun had a conflict with the monarch race in the Qin country, and it was the same in the primordial realm. It would be strange if he was annoyed. However, Lin Zhun would not back down just because of the other party's title. So what if he was a sovereign? Lin Zhun believed that in the future, he would not be afraid of any sovereign. Old brother Ninetails, I know you have good intentions, but there's no need for that today. Since he's an expert from the monarch race, I, Ghostface King, would like to have a taste of his own medicine, unless he's willing to put down the sword in his hand and admit defeat. Hearing Lin Zhun's words, Ninetails was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He came with good intentions, but he did not expect Lin Zhun to not appreciate it all. He was worried that Lin Zhun would lose his life to Huang Tian. You? All right, since you insist on fighting, then pretend I didn't say anything. Ninetails turned around and walked to the side. He was thinking about what he should do if Lin Zhun lost. Seeing Lin Zhun reject Ninetails' good intentions, Huang Tian laughed loudly and said, "There's a saying that heroes come from young, but I think the same goes for fools. I'm giving you a chance to live, yet you don't cherish it. Don't blame me for being ruthless." Before Huang Tian could finish his sentence, he suddenly exploded. The Thunder Gull Divine Sword appeared before Lin Zhun in almost a second. Amidst the flashes of lightning and thunder, the sword struck. Before the sword arrived, the lightning arrived first. Even though Lin Zhun could travel at the speed of light within Sky Gale Valley, he still couldn't reach the speed of light in the outside world. This was because Sky Gale Valley itself was like a different world, and its spatial strength was different from that of the Sea of Constellations. Therefore, these lightning bolts bombarded Lin Zhun's body without holding back. Dazzling lightning bolts rose like a bomb as Huang Tian's sword struck. "Brat, stay!" He believed that as long as Lin Jun was affected by the lightning for even a 10,000th of a second, he would be able to cut him in half. Clang! The sound of swords clashing rang out. Lin Jun wasn't affected by the lightning at all. In the nick of time, he pulled out the blazing crane to block the attack. At the same time, he counterattacked with Jackdaw, seal of immovable bright king. Against an expert like Huang Tian, Lin Jun immediately used a killing move. He purposely lured the lightning to strike him. He had long since comprehended the true essence of lightning, so how could he possibly be hurt by it? He quickly blocked the attack and took the opportunity to counterattack. Huang Tian was also someone who had comprehended the true essence of lightning. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that Lin Jun would be the same as him. Since the lightning was ineffective, it was too late for him to dodge Lin Jun's counterattack. As he hastily blocked, he felt a powerful surge of energy from Lin Jun's sword. Although it wasn't enough to hurt him, its might was far beyond his imagination. His arm ached as he barely managed to block Lin Jun's attack. However, he was already at a disadvantage. Lin Jun wasn't going to let him off. He immediately put away the blazing crane and leaped high into the air. Wielding his sword with both hands, he once again slashed down with a force that could split heaven and earth. Seeing Lin Jun in the air, Huang Tian, who was in a sorry state just now, revealed a mocking expression. He had never seen such an arrogant martial artist. Attacking with all his strength with an open door, wasn't he just seeking death? Regardless of whether he was prepared or not, he swung his sword and attacked. This time, it was sword energy that filled the sky. The sword energy was like rain hitting a banana leaf. It lashed down on Lin Jun's body like a torrential downpour. Every strike was powerful enough to pierce through a planet. However, it couldn't pierce through Lin Jun at all. Lin Jun's powerful physical strength was perfectly displayed. He forcefully resisted Huang Tian's wave of sword energy. Wielding his sword with both hands, he slashed down with his strongest stance. Great Vajra, Chakra Seal. Chapter 1229. When Lin Jun first used the overlaying 9 seals technique, Huang Tian had already lost the initiative. He thought he could seize the opportunity to unleash a wave of sword chi, but he didn't expect Lin Jun's defense to be so strong. Once again, he miscalculated and had no choice but to face Lin Jun's second overlaying technique. The Great Vajra Wheel Seal's attack was doubled. Huang Tian was quite capable as well. In a hurry, his sword glowed with a golden light as he blocked the attack once again. After a loud crash that sounded like a bolt from the blue, Imperial Sky slipped and fell to one knee. The muscles on his arm trembled uncontrollably, and a trace of red appeared at the corner of his mouth. Lin Jun didn't let him off after gaining the upper hand. He followed up with a third strike. Purgatory, Outer Lion Seal. At this moment, his aura was soaring. He used all his strength in this strike, and his 3 million units of divine power exploded to its peak. With a downward slash, a crack appeared in the space of the Sea of Constellations once again. Facing Lin Jun's powerful strike, Huang Tian actually felt a trace of fear in his heart. He had miscalculated repeatedly, and this was his most passive moment. Facing his opponent's killing move, he definitely couldn't block this strike. Helpless, Huang Tian swung the sword in his hand with all his might and charged straight at Lin Jun's face. This kind of attack wasn't conventional. It was equivalent to giving up on the weapon in his hand. Lin Jun didn't hold back either. He channeled his spiritual power and kept the Thunder Gull sword in the realm of the gods. Because he kept the sword, his attack slowed down a little, giving Huang Tian a chance. He immediately opened his arms, and starlight shot out from his palms, filling the sky with brilliant colors. After a series of real and fake explosions, smoke rose from the ground and filled the sky. Ghostface King, today's matter isn't over. Let's meet again. As the smoke dispersed, Huang Tian's flying palace was already flying away. This flying palace was also a high-grade one, but it was only as big as a mid-grade one. However, it was extremely fast and soon disappeared from sight. Although Lin Zhun's sword palace might be able to catch up to him, it would definitely be a difficult chase. Lin Zhun didn't have much time to waste with Huang Tian. Obtaining the Thunder Gold Divine Sword from this trial battle could be considered a success. Lin Zhun happily took out the Thunder Gold and looked at it. This sword contained powerful lightning energy, and it was a weapon that was very suitable for Lin Zhun. Just as he was looking at it, Ninetails walked over. Looking at Lin Zhun, Ninetails was at a loss for words. He originally wanted to tell Lin Zhun not to be rash because he might not be a match for Emperor Sky. However, he didn't expect that Lin Zhun would actually show off his prowess. Not only did he beat Emperor Sky to the point where he had to flee, he even threw away the weapon in his hand. As a result, his previous actions seemed unnecessary. Moreover, Lin Zhun's strength made Nine-Tailed Beast look at him in a new light. Nine-Tailed Beast's strength was slightly weaker than Imperial Sky's, which meant that Lin Zhun's strength was above Nine-Tailed Beast's. Looking at Nine-Tail's awkward expression, Lin Zhun smiled. "Brother White, you don't have to be like this. I know you had good intentions, but you didn't expect Emperor Sky to be such an embroidered pillow." Ninetails was really thick-skinned. He gave Lin Zhun a thumbs up. "Brother Lin, I'm impressed. Your combat power is very different from what I imagined. Why don't I just call you brother from now on?" Lin Zhun waved his hand. "Don't. Let's just call each other that." "Why?" "Brother, are you going back to the demon planet now?" Ninetails hurriedly nodded. "Of course. I finished cultivating more than 100 years ago, but I couldn't wait for you to come out, so I had no choice but to kill time here. My family on the demon planet still has some matters waiting for me to settle." "All right then, let's go. I'm going back to the demon planet anyway." Lin Zhun raised his hand and summoned the Sword Palace. The two of them boarded it and flew away. Some of the godly kings who were watching the battle in the surrounding space remembered the name Ghostface King. To be able to defeat Emperor Sky in a head-on battle, it seemed like Ghostface King had hopes of becoming a ruler. Unknowingly, Lin Zhun was considered one of the top godly kings. It would take many years to return to the demon planet from Sky Gale Valley. During this time, Lin Zhun's mission was still to challenge the Sky Tower. The Sky Tower had 33 levels. Lin Zhun had already reached the 30th level. Passing the 30th level should give him 60 points in each of his 4 dark matter attributes. The 31st level would give him 70 points, the 32nd level would give him 80 points, and the 33rd level would give him 90 points. Passing all the levels of the Sky Tower would give Lin Zhun a total of 300 points in dark matter. However, the higher the level, the harder it got. Lin Zhun had spent more than a decade on his way back to the demon planet, but he still couldn't pass the 30th level. It was estimated that it would take at least 34 years to pass through this level. 12 years later, the Sword Palace finally returned to the demon planet's star zone. After the Sword Palace entered the demon planet's atmosphere, Lin Zhun wanted to ask Nine-Tailed Fox where his family was and send him back. After all, the demon planet was a huge planet. It was even bigger than the Milky Way, with a diameter of 3 million light-years. However, Nine-Tailed Fox waved his hand. "Thank you for your kindness, but there's no need for that. There are many teleportation arrays on the demon planet. It's very convenient to go anywhere. There's no need to fly in the sky. All right then, I won't send you off. We'll meet again if fate wills it." Of course. When I'm done with my family, I might go find Brother Lin. Let's go out and explore together. To be honest, family matters are rather annoying. I prefer a free life. Brother, you're someone I have high hopes for. You'll definitely become a ruler in the future." Lin Zhun smiled, but didn't comment. The two waved goodbye. Nine-Tailed Fox controlled his palace and left. Lin Zhun also controlled the Sword Palace to enter the atmosphere. Below him was the endless land of the demon planet. "Chris, where should I go?" "Master, if you want to understand the true essence of Earth, you'll need to find an inland country. I suggest you go to the demon planet's Abyss Country. Enter the underground world from there. The deeper you go, the more abundant the Earth energy will be." Abyss Country. All right, let's go take a look. Lin Zhun searched for the Abyss Country's location on the map and then drove the spaceship there. Along the way, Lin Jun passed through more than 10 teleportation arrays. It took him 3 years to reach the border of the Abyss Country. The Abyss Country referred to a country that was entirely underground. When it was built, it was based on a bottomless abyss. The entrance to the country was in a huge abyss. Looking down from the sky, there was a dark crack on the ground that spanned thousands of miles. When Lin Jun reached the entrance of the Abyss Country, a wave of electricity swept over. Chapter 1230. Lin Jun stopped. He knew that these were the guards of the Kingdom of Abyss. Lin Jun's identity was that of someone from the primordial realm. When he first came to the demon planet, he had applied for a demon planet identity. He did not have a specific nationality, so he was new to the primordial realm. After arriving here, Lin Jun didn't use the Sword Palace because flying the Sword Palace consumed too much energy. What he was using now was a small shield sacred worship. Shuttles were too slow, and Lin Jun's shield god worship was a speed-type worship. At the very least, it could fly pretty well on the planet. After the shield god worship landed, Lin Jun was scanned by radio waves. From the primordial realm, Lin Jun, peak middle god. There is no record of him committing crimes on the demon planet. Lin Jun's record on the demon planet could be considered clean. He had some conflicts with Wang Chong and the others in the purgatory, but Lin Jun now had the authority of a god, so these things were hidden. Unless a god personally came to investigate, no one would be able to find anything. The captain of the inspection team was a quasi-god king, but he had the authority of a god king. After inspecting Lin Jun, he did not find any problems. All right, it's confirmed that you can enter the Kingdom of Abyss. Remember not to cause trouble here. The Kingdom of Abyss is not like the primordial realm. There are people everywhere who have the right to deal with you. Lin Jun smiled. He did not want to get tangled up in these minor details. After passing the inspection, he piloted the shield god worship into the bottomless abyss. This was a novel experience. Usually, he would fly the aircraft into the sky, but this time, he was flying underground. The surrounding scenery was also very strange. In the first 100 li, it was a military zone, and there were no residents. But after 100 li, a strange scene appeared. Below 100 li, everything suddenly opened up. The vast underground world was hundreds of kilometers high. The atmosphere here was fresh, and there was a rich, earthy fragrance. In the sky was constructed with formations and was extremely sturdy. Even a god would find it extremely difficult to destroy it. The sky was dotted with stars, and the sun, moon, and stars were all present. It was not much different from the ground. There was no end to the underground space. Below Lin Jun was a huge city. Chris explained to Lin Jun, "Master, the underground space of the Kingdom of the Abyss has a diameter of 300 light years and a population of over 1 trillion. It is ruled by some lords of the Abyss. Among the people living here, humans and demons occupy the majority. Master, if you wish to cultivate Earth elemental energy, you will need to head to the Deep Abyss Underground Palace. That place is connected to the demonic planet's ley lines. It is the best place to cultivate. Then let's go to the Abyss Palace now. Master, I'm afraid you can't go there yet. If you want to go to the Abyss Underground Palace, you must first have the identity of the Abyss Kingdom, and you must be a noble. Commoners are forbidden to enter there, unless you kill your way through." Lin Jun was speechless. The Demon Star was a planet ruled by a ruler, so the ruler of every nation was a godly monarch. The ruler of the Kingdom of the Abyss was not just a single ruler, but a group of Abyss Lords. In other words, a group of God Kings. Killing them was easier said than done. Even if he could kill his way through, there would probably be reinforcements coming. Lin Jun didn't want to be so arrogant as to fight against an entire country by himself. "Chris, are you messing with me? Killing my way through is unrealistic. If I become a noble, do you think I will make any outstanding contributions here? Or lead an army to rebel? Mix with those commoners? No. Master, you misunderstand. It is not difficult to obtain the identity of a noble. A 9-star purgatory warrior is a noble of any country. This is the same on the demonic planet." Lin Jun was stunned. This was something he could study. He was already a 5-star purgatory warrior. This was the first mission given by Lone Star Fishing Old Man, and Lin Jun had already completed it. Advancing from 5-star to 9-star was as difficult as ascending to the heavens for others. However, for Lin Jun, who had the strength of a godly monarch, it was only a matter of time, and it shouldn't take too long. If you had told me earlier, I would have gone to the geocentric purgatory. Now that I've come to the Abyss Kingdom, won't I have to go back? You don't have to trouble yourself, Master. There's more than one entrance to the geocentric purgatory. In the Abyss Kingdom, you can also go to the geocentric purgatory. It's just that the entrance is different from the one you entered. Knowing this, Lin Jun was no longer in a hurry. Although he didn't know how much time had passed while cultivating, Lin Jun was also very tired from flying back and forth in the spaceship. Since he had come to the Abyss Kingdom, it would be good to walk around and experience the local customs here. Cultivating the earth element would be a long process. Before that, Lin Jun planned to stay here for a few months to rest. The Divine Shield spaceship landed at the edge of the city. Further ahead was the no-fly zone. The height of the no-fly zone was 30 meters, and flying objects were not allowed above 30 meters. Only some small aircraft, such as motorboats and hover cars, were allowed. Lin Jun did not fly. He began to walk slowly along the way, looking at this completely different world. There were many human-like life forms here, but the streets were filled with demons. The demons were different from the astral beasts. They were not the kind of race that could wander in the universe at will. They also had the characteristics of living in groups. In front of him, 3 rabbit tribe girls walked hand in hand. Their youthful and beautiful figures and bell-like laughter were pleasing to the eye. People who lived on the demonic planet were at least in the immortal stage from birth. When they reached adulthood, they could basically enter the divine realm. People here rarely died of natural causes. Even if you met a girl on the street, it would be difficult to tell their age. For example, the 3 girls just now were all in the lower celestial stage, but their actual age was more than 100,000 years old. Lin Jun, who had lived for less than 3,000 years, was incomparably young here. It was just that others could not detect his age. After walking around the street filled with shops for a while, Lin Jun did not find anyone close to his age. They came to a stall where some unique handicrafts were placed. Lin Jun stopped and looked at it with interest. The stall was very long. Not far from it, 2 girls were also picking things. One of the girls in green picked up a red pouch. "Second, miss, this looks good. You can buy it and give it to the son-in-law in the future. He will definitely like it." The girl in plain clothes, who was called Second Miss, shook her head. "No, don't talk about the son-in-law. It's annoying." "No way, Second Mississippi. The son-in-law's conditions are so good. You don't like this? Is there someone you like in your heart?" The girl in plain clothes sighed slightly. "Someone I like. So what if there is no one? Some things can't be done as one pleases." Lin Jun heard this voice and felt that it was somewhat familiar. He turned his head and saw that the girl was also turning her head. Their eyes met and they were stunned. Chapter 12:31. Back when Lin Jun was on Earth, she would always hear people say such words. The world was actually very small, because sometimes you will inadvertently meet someone you never thought you would meet in a certain place. Meeting in the same city, in the same scenic spot, or even in a foreign country. After meeting, people would feel that the world was very big, but it was also very small. However, after leaving Earth and gradually entering the universe's starry sky, no one spoke like that anymore. No one would say that the universe was so small. It was simply impossible for people to have a chance encounter with each other. This demonic planet alone had a diameter of 3 million light years, which was much, much larger than the Milky Way. A person who could live for 100 years would fly at a speed of 300,000 kilometers per second. Flying from birth to death would take 30,000 lifetimes. But today, Lin Jun suddenly felt that the universe didn't seem that big. Or rather, fate was a wonderful thing. He actually met an acquaintance here. By Susu. Lin Jun had never really forgotten that naturally seductive face. She was the first friend he met when he walked out of the primordial realm and into the endless sea of stars. Or rather, he had a crush on a woman. But in the long life of a warrior, there might be many such experiences. Lin Jun wouldn't ask for every woman he liked to come to his side. Compared to the pursuit of martial arts, feelings could only be placed in a secondary position, especially when the two of them hadn't really reached that stage yet. He had thought that he would meet Basusu in the future when he was looking for her sister, Snow White. But he didn't expect to meet her like this. After not seeing her for so many years, Basusu had also reached the realm of late-stage mid-god. This surprised Lin Jun a little, but it was normal when he thought about it. Snow White and Basusu were the most outstanding geniuses in the primordial realm. Their realms were originally higher than Lin Jun's, and when they cultivated, they didn't need to cultivate everything to perfection like Lin Jun. It was normal for them to become mid-gods now. Lin Jun was surprised for a moment, but after all, he had amazing self-control and quickly reacted. He waved at Basusu and said, "Hey, Susu, what a coincidence." Basusu did not answer Lin Jun's question. Instead, she walked over in a daze and reached out to grab Lin Jun's cheeks, pulling them apart forcefully. Lin Jun's current physical fitness could be said to be invulnerable. Her level of pulling naturally wouldn't hurt Lin Jun in the slightest. On the contrary, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This girl obviously didn't believe her own eyes. She actually used such a method to verify it. After a few tugs, Basusu's eyes suddenly lit up. "Yup!" Basusu shrieked and jumped on Lin Jun. Her arms wrapped around Lin Jun's neck, and her legs wrapped around Lin Jun's waist. Like an octopus, she clung onto Lin Jun in an indecent posture. He used all the strength in his body to shake it as he shouted loudly, "It's true. You're actually real. I remember you. I remember your appearance, your figure, and your scent. You're definitely real. Why are you here? Are you here to look for me?" Lin Jun patted her back with a smile and said, "It's a small world. It looks like we're quite fated to meet. What a coincidence. I thought that I would never get the chance to meet you again." Basusu was clearly too excited. The green-robed young lady behind her quickly ran over and tugged at her arm, saying, "Second young mistress, that's enough. We're on the streets right now. How can you behave like that? If others were to see you like this, it would reflect badly on you. You should know that our clan is the center of attention in the Abyss Kingdom." The green-robed young lady's words cleared Basusu's mind a little. She got down from Lin Jun's body in embarrassment, but the excitement in her eyes was still apparent. "Lin Jun, let's go over there and have a seat." Basusu pointed to a bar not too far away. Lin Jun nodded. Since he had met Basusu, he couldn't just part with her so easily. This was a good opportunity for him to have a chat with her and see what had happened after they parted. The three of them walked into the bar. The bar's decor was pretty good. There was even a formation running inside. It was obvious that the bar was expensive. It was a very high-end place. They found a table and sat down. Basusu sat across from Lin Jun, and the green-robed young lady sat next to her. After sitting down, the green-robed young lady began sizing up Lin Jun. After sizing him up for a while, a hint of disdain appeared in the green-robed young lady's eyes. All in all, Lin Jun's situation wasn't too bad. He was at the peak of the middle god realm, and he was still young. His future potential was decent, and he was quite handsome. However, in the green-robed young lady's eyes, Lin Jun's existence was a threat to her young mistress. It was obvious that Basusu and Lin Jun's relationship wasn't ordinary. In all these years, she had never seen Basusu take the initiative to hug a man. Moreover, she had lost her composure. Although Lin Jun's conditions weren't bad, he was still far from being a good match for Basusu. Moreover, her family had already decided to let Basusu get married. Her future in-laws' conditions were quite good. Lin Jun's existence was even more of an eyesore. It seemed that she should let this guy know the difficulties and back off. Before Basusu and Lin Jun could catch up, the green-robed young lady spoke first. "Second young mistress, this person is your old friend, right?" Basusu nodded repeatedly. "Yes, we knew each other in the primordial realm. His name is Lin Jun. He saved my life back then. Lin Jun, this is Meng-Er. She's my sister in the family." Calling Meng-Er sister was already giving Meng-Er too much credit. In fact, she was just Basusu's personal maid. However, this kind of maid had a higher status. Meng, who was usually in charge of all matters related to Basusu. Lin Jun nodded at Meng-Er. Hello, Miss Meng-er. Meng-er waved her hand. You're welcome. Since you're the young mistress savior, I should also thank you. I wonder if Mr. Lin Jun is currently from the Kingdom of Abyss? Not yet. I don't have a nationality at the moment. I'm preparing to join the Kingdom of Abyss. Hearing this, Meng-er looked down on Lin Jun even more. She asked this because she wanted to find out Lin Jun's background. Seeing that Lin Jun didn't even have a nationality, it was obvious that he didn't even have a family. A mid-god without a family to rely on. The gap between such a person and the young mistress was too big. Meng chuckled a few times and said, Lin Jun, you've come at the right time. Next month is the young mistress wedding date. Since you've decided to join the Kingdom of Abyss, then stay in this underground city and don't leave. When a young mistress gets married, you can also come and have a drink. Lin Jun looked at Bai Susu. You gonna get married? Without waiting for Bai Susu to answer, Meng-er spoke first. Yes, our master made the decision. She's going to marry a Ju Tian from the Emperor clan. He also knew the young mistress when they were in the primordial realm. Now he's already at the peak of the superior god realm and has a chance to advance to the quasi-divine king level. Chapter 1232. Hearing Meng-er's boastful introduction, Bai Susu's face suddenly revealed an awkward expression. After seeing Lin Jun's excitement calm down, Bai Susu sighed. Back when Lin Jun was in the primordial realm, how glorious was he? In the war between the surface races and the endless races, Lin Jun turned the tide and forced the endless races to retreat in defeat. Bai Susu was very clear about this matter, and Lin Jun, who was so glorious in the primordial realm, had faded into the crowd after arriving at the demonic planet. Although a medium god was passable, he was definitely not outstanding. In this abyss kingdom where gods walked everywhere, no one would pay much attention to him. Bai Susu wanted to comfort Lin Jun, but when the words came to her mouth, she did not know how to say them. Comforting a proud son of heaven was a blow in itself. As Meng-er spoke, she observed Lin Jun's expression. She originally thought that Lin Jun would be excited, terrified, and at a loss when he heard this. At the very least, there should be some actions that were in line with his status. Lin Jun did indeed move. He picked up a glass of wine from the bar and took a sip. Oh, deity king, then I really should take a look. Maybe it's someone I know. Chapter 1233. Bai Susu did not understand the meaning of this, but since Lin Jun said so, she agreed. While Meng-er was tired, Bai Susu said hesitantly, What are your plans for coming to the Fiend planet? I'm here to train in the Earth's core purgatory and get the 9-star purgatory warrior status. That way, it'll be more convenient. Bai Susu nodded. Yes, I believe you can do it. You used to be a miraculous person. Good luck. Meng-er curled her lips in disdain. 9-star. That's not so easy to get. Lin Jun ignored her and added Susu as a friend in another universe. Susu, remember what I told you. You don't have to worry too much about some things. Maybe things won't come to that. Bai Susu thought Lin Jun was comforting her and nodded silently. After drinking something, Meng-er urged Bai Susu to leave. Miss, go back quickly. Master will miss you if you stay out for too long. Bai Susu stood up reluctantly. She wanted to spend more time with Lin Jun, but she knew that there were many things that were beyond her control. She did not want to cause too much trouble for Lin Jun. Just as she was about to leave, Lin Jun said, Susu, you're about to get married. Shouldn't you give me an invitation? I want to attend your wedding. Bai Susu didn't want to give Lin Jun an invitation. This wedding was a form of torture for her. However, she couldn't bring herself to reject Lin Jun, so she had no choice but to give her an invitation. Lin Jun accepted the invitation with satisfaction. Susu, I'll be there on time. The few of them said goodbye, and Bai Susu and Meng walked out first. After they left, Lin Jun lost the mood to stroll around. He got up and left, preparing to go to the Earth's core purgatory to get the 9-star status as soon as possible. The entrance to the geocentric purgatory could be reached through a teleportation portal. Lin Jun first applied for a citizenship of the Abyss from the Household Registration Office. This was very simple for an intelligent life like Chrissy, who had the authority of a ruler. After that, Lin Jun stepped onto the teleportation formation and teleported to the Earth's core purgatory, which was 5 million kilometers away from the underground city. The entrance to the Earth's core purgatory here was similar to the place Lin Jun had first gone to. After entering the safe zone, there was a fork in the road that led to different elemental purgatories. Lin Jun went to the last entrance to the purgatory of primordial chaos. Although the berserk beasts inside were the strongest and the elemental storm was rampant, it was nothing to Lin Jun now. When they reached the 7th level of the purgatory of primordial chaos, Lin Jun chose to train here. In just 3 days, Lin Jun had advanced from a 5-star purgatory warrior to a 6-star purgatory warrior. If this continued, Lin Jun would definitely become a 9-star purgatory warrior in at most a month. While Lin Jun was training, Bai Susu also returned to the Bai family. After returning to the Bai family, Meng immediately reported to the patriarch, Bai Feng, that Bai Susu had met a man. The patriarch of the Bai family, Bai Feng, was a quasi-divine king expert. When he heard Meng Er's words, he was immediately dissatisfied. Snow White had no hope of getting married. His hope was on Bai Susu. He would not allow any twists and turns in the process. The Bai family had not been well managed these years, and their talents had withered. Among the disciples, except for the sisters Snow White and Bai Susu, none of them were successful. Snow White and Bai Susu were women after all. They could not represent the Bai family in the future. This time, the Zhu Tian's family had given a very generous betrothal gift. It was enough to revitalize the Bai family. He could not let go of this opportunity. Meng immediately bring second young miss back to her courtyard and guard her strictly. Do not allow her to go out before the wedding. After the wedding, he will be a member of the Emperor clan. He will have nothing to do with our Bai family. I understand, Patriarch. I will definitely guard second young miss strictly. However, second young miss also gave that Lin Jun an invitation. When the time comes, he will also attend second young miss's wedding. So what if he comes? He's just an insignificant person. When the time comes, just find someone to keep an eye on him and not let him in. Bai Feng did not put this Lin Jun in his eyes at all. If there was a chance, he would not hesitate to eliminate him and completely cut off Bai Susu's thoughts. Meng received the order and left. Bai Susu was also completely grounded in her courtyard. She was not allowed to take a step out of the house. Everything about the wedding was going on in full swing. Many reputable families in the underground city had already received the invitation. Now, they were only waiting for the Bai family's old master and the Emperor clan's old master to return. The wedding would be held immediately. A month later, the Emperor clan's old master returned to the family. The current Emperor clan's patriarch was called Qing Tian. He was also a quasi-god king expert. However, he planned to wait until after the Zhu Tian's wedding to pass the position of patriarch to him. After all, the Zhu Tian's young hero was almost as strong as a quasi-god king. Qing Tian led the Zhu Tian and everyone in the family to welcome the patriarch's return. The Emperor clan's position was not only in the Abyss Kingdom, but also in the entire Fiend Planet. This was because there were 2 patriarchs in the family. Qing Tian, Huang Tian. The patriarch who had returned was Huang Tian. He was a super expert who had become a god king countless years ago. As for Qing Tian, he was even more amazing. He was the family's old ancestor and was now a ruler. However, after Qing Tian became a ruler, he left the Abyss Kingdom and the Fiend Planet. After leaving, he had not returned. Furthermore, Qing Tian had said that unless it was a matter of life and death for the family, there was no need to look for him for anything. This time, the change of patriarch and the Zhu Tian's wedding were important matters that no one dared to inform Qing Tian. This old ancestor was just a symbol to the family. In reality, he did not care about anything. The real person in charge was still the patriarch, Huang Tian. When Huang Tian returned to the family, everyone listened obediently to his teachings. Huang Tian sat on a chair in the middle of the family's hall. Everyone else stood below. Nobody dared to raise their heads to look at him. Only the Zhu Tian, who was also thinking of revenge, stole a glance at the patriarch. The old master was his idol, as well as the goal he wanted to pursue. The patriarch had taken out a high-grade weapon, the 18 Thunder Gull swords, to facilitate the marriage. Otherwise, the Bai family would still be making all sorts of excuses. Therefore, the Ju Tian was very grateful to the patriarch. In his heart, the patriarch was a wise and mighty figure. However, when he stole a glance, the Ju Tian was stunned. Huang Tian sat there. Although he had a smile on his face, the displeasure in his heart was clearly expressed. The Ju Tian was also a person with sharp senses. In his opinion, the patriarch seemed to be. Chapter 1234. Huang Tian was still in a bad mood as he sat in his seat. How many years had it been? It had probably been tens of millions of years since Huang Tian had last experienced the feeling of being chased around by someone. As a god king, Huang Tian was one of the strongest among them. Even some of the stronger god kings knew that Huang Tian's ancestor, Qing Tian, was a ruler. However, that despicable ghost-faced king had actually defeated him in a head-on confrontation and stolen his Thunder Gull godly sword. Huang Tian couldn't accept his loss. Lin Zhun's 3 consecutive strikes had been like a torrential downpour. His timing had been perfect. Huang Tian, on the other hand, had repeatedly made mistakes. He had lost 2 miserably. After escaping from Skywind Valley, Huang Tian set off on his journey home. However, the gloominess in his heart hadn't lessened at all. He had been in a bad mood for more than 10 years. Now that he had returned to his family, he felt even more depressed as he looked at his juniors. The promised Thunder Gull godly sword was gone. What could he give to the Ju Tian as a betrothal gift? Wouldn't he be breaking his promise? Huang Tian hesitated for a moment. In the end, he could only use his clan points to purchase a new high-grade sword from the clan store. Although the Wind Lightning sword wasn't bad, it couldn't compare to the Thunder Gull godly sword. Although the 18 godly swords were also high-grade, they were the best of the best. They were half a grade higher than normal high-grade swords. Now, Huang Tian could only hope that the Bai family didn't know what was good for them. As long as he married Bai Susu, it wouldn't matter if it was real or fake. You may all rise. How are the preparations for the Ju Tian's wedding coming along? The current head of the Bai family, Qing Tian, stood up and replied respectfully, "Old master, the preparations for the wedding have been completed. However, the date of the wedding hasn't been decided yet. Don't worry, I'm already back. And on my way back, I saw the old man from the Bai family. He should be back in 1 or 2 days. The wedding will be held in 10 days, just like what we said before." Sky Pillar, Ju Tian, and the others were overjoyed. With Emperor Sky's words, this matter was set in stone. Qing Tian was a meticulous person. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "Old master, the people of the Bai family, be it Snow White or Bai Susu, don't agree with this marriage. A few days ago, I did a divination, and I'm afraid there will be changes during the wedding." Qing Tian himself was proficient in the art of divination. He had once divined the marriage of a Ju Tian, but he found that the divination showed that this marriage would cause waves. Moreover, this wave would not be small. He was worried that something unexpected would happen. Emperor Sky knew what Qing Tian was capable of. After hearing his words, he thought for a moment. "It's fine. On my way back, I invited some friends from the Fiend Star to attend the wedding. With me and a few friends there. As long as the ruler doesn't show up, no one will be able to cause any trouble." Qing Tian was overjoyed. Emperor Sky knew many God King experts from the Fiend Star. For example, Lustman of the 8 Great Hammers, Tree God King of the Quiet Forest, and so on. As long as these people were willing to come, there wouldn't be any problems. Emperor Sky waved at the Ju Tian. "Come here." The Ju Tian respectfully came to Emperor Sky. Emperor Sky took out the Thunderwind sword. "This sword is the betrothal gift I promised you. It's also something that will move the Bai family. On the day of the wedding, you can take it out and give it to Bai Susu. Then, this matter will be settled." The Ju Tian took the high-grade weapon. He felt lightning flashing on the sword, causing his hair to stand on end. This was a super weapon he had never seen before. In order to get Bai Susu, the Ju Tian had spent a lot of effort. Actually, he wasn't a lecherous person. It was just that the Bai sisters were too important to him. From what he knew, after a female heavenly fox had intercourse with a male, the power they comprehended would be the same as the male. No matter who obtained the sisters' bodies, they would be able to obtain a new ability out of thin air. Snow White was as cold as ice. She also grasped the true essence of ice. However, it was a pity that she had already given away her virginity. Who knew which bastard she had given it to? After hearing this news, the Jew Tian was depressed for a long time. Fortunately, there was still Baisusu. Originally, Snow White was the empress. However, after Baisusu appeared, the Jew Tian realized that the power in Baisusu's body was even more mysterious than her sister's. What Baisusu possessed wasn't a specific type of energy. Instead, it was a powerful fusion ability. Energy harmonization. It would prevent all types of energy from clashing and fusing into one. This ability was even rarer. The Jew Tian discovered this in an ancient book. Perhaps the Bai family, including Baisusu herself, didn't know. To outsiders, Baisusu's talent was below her sister's because she wasn't proficient in any type of elemental energy. It was also because of this that the Jew Tian wanted to marry Baisusu no matter what. As long as he could obtain this woman, he would definitely benefit greatly. The Jew Tian didn't tell anyone this secret. Now that he had obtained the old master's sword, this matter was considered a success. Carefully keeping the Thunderwind sword, the Jew Tian was filled with satisfaction. He was looking forward to the day of his wedding. Following Huang Tian's return, the people he invited also arrived at the underground city and the Emperor clan. The first to arrive was the quiet forest god Tree King. The god Tree King was also Huang Tian's good friend. This time, he brought two people with him. One was his good friend, the violent Ape King, and the other was his younger brother, the God Tree King. The God Tree King was also a veteran God King and was very powerful. Seeing his arrival, Huang Tian happily came out to welcome him. Congratulations, congratulations. Congratulations, old brother Huang Tian, for having a new member in your family. Haha, congratulations to you too. Come, come, come. I've already prepared a feast for you, old tree. I've been waiting for you. After welcoming the God Tree King in, more people came. They were Zhang Huang, Wang Xingba, and Zhu Yuanhu from the 8 Great Hammers. The 8 Great Hammers was also a big guild on the demon planet. Huang Tian and Lustman were already familiar with each other, which was why he informed Lustman in Skygale Valley. Zhang Huang said to Huang Tian, "Old brother, my big brother has something to do and will be delayed for 2 days. However, it will definitely be back on the day of the wedding. We're just here to be the vanguard." Ha ha ha. Welcome. The 3 of you are really outstanding. Each of you has become a god king. Now that the 8 Great Hammers are doing well in the demon planet, sweeping away the other guilds, your future is limitless. Huang Tian and a few of them exchanged a few polite words and welcomed them in. After a while, another 2 people came. This time, the people who came were more terrifying. One was the demonic Corpse King, and the other was the demonic Corpse King's master, the Heaven Ghost King. The Heaven Ghost King was an extremely powerful god king. He had cultivated 9 heaven ghosts, and each of them had the strength of a mid-level god king. If it was a one-on-one battle, Huang Tian admitted that he was not a match for the Heaven Ghost King. This time, Huang Tian was also surprised by the Heaven Ghost King's arrival. He hurriedly came to welcome them. The 2 monsters let out a few weird laughs and said something in human language. For a moment, the underground city was bustling with noise and excitement. The aura of various experts soared into the sky, causing people's hearts to tremble. Chapter 1235. Just 3 days after the Emperor clan's old master Huang Tian returned, the Bai family's old master also returned. Old Master Bai was also a God King level expert and had been famous for as long as Huang Tian. He was also very famous among the God Kings. The 9-tailed celestial fox's original body was extremely talented. The reason why the Bai family was able to gain a foothold in the demonic planet was because of Old Master Bai's fame. However, Old Master Bai wasn't willing to take care of things and liked to travel. This caused the family to gradually decline. This time, it involved the marriage with the Emperor clan. Using this opportunity, Bai Feng took the initiative to contact Old Master Bai. He also hoped that Old Master Bai could return to take charge and restore the family's prestige. Old Master Bai's original name was Bai Hua. However, almost no one remembered this name. Everyone called him Nine-Tailed King. When Nine-Tailed King returned to the family, he didn't ask everyone to welcome him like Huang Tian did. Instead, he only asked Bai Feng to meet him. Bai Feng immediately went to greet him happily. When he arrived at Old Master Bai's residence, Bai Feng saw this old ancestor that he hadn't seen for millions of years. Just as he was about to greet him, Nine-Tailed King waved his hand. No need for these formalities. Tell me what happened here. It's like this, Old Master. This marriage with the Emperor clan is a great opportunity for our family to rise. Although the Emperor clan Zhu Tian is young, his character and strength are top-notch. He could be considered a rare genius on the demonic planet. He can enter the quasi-god king level at any time. He is more than enough to match Susu. Oh, is he as good as you say? He will only be better than what I said. Old Master, you have never seen this Zhu Tian before. You will know when you see him. I admit that I have seen countless people. However, I can say that no one under 50,000 years old can surpass the Zhu Tian. Looking at Bai Feng, who was speaking so confidently, Nine-Tailed King felt disgusted. He didn't even have a draft when he bragged. You have seen countless people? How many people have you seen with your pair of tiny eyes? No one under 50,000 years old can surpass him? I was just stunned by a guy who wasn't even 3,000 years old. But Nine-Tailed King was too embarrassed to say that. Ghostface King was a special case. He was probably incomparable to the average person. All right. You don't have to wave flags and shout for the people of the Emperor clan here. Get to the point. There's an important point. The Zhu Tian is not only in love with Susu, but more importantly, they offered a generous betrothal gift worth 30 billion witch coins. There are hundreds of carriages full of them. The Nine-Tailed King finally waved her hand impatiently. You think you're blinded by the mere tens of billions of witch coins? That's because you haven't seen the world. What's truly valuable is the clan points. Your items that are worth tens of billions of witch coins are nothing in the clan store. After being reprimanded by the Nine-Tailed King, Bai Feng was not anxious. Instead, she said with a smile, Old Master, you're right. I'm not such a short-sighted person. What's truly valuable is a high-grade weapon that the Emperor clan Old Master offered, the Thunder Gull of the 18 godly swords. After saying that, Bai Feng studied the Nine-Tailed King carefully. He had done his homework on this matter. He had also studied the value of weapons for a long time. Basically, he was now a qualified weapon fanatic. From what she knew, a high-grade weapon like the 18 godly swords was the best weapon an ordinary godly king could get. Even if the Old Master was a godly king, he probably did not have such a good item. This item was the key to moving the Old Master. However, she did not understand the Nine-Tailed King's reaction. The Nine-Tailed King had heard Bai Feng talk about weapons before, but she did not pay much attention to it. In her opinion, a young woman's marriage was a small matter and should not bother her. As for the marriage with the Emperor clan, which meant becoming in-laws with that old man, the Emperor Sky, the Nine-Tailed King thought it was a good idea and agreed to it. However, after experiencing the battle between Lin Jun and Emperor Sky in front of Skygale Valley, the Nine-Tailed King's mindset changed. It seemed like Emperor Sky was only SOSO. Compared to a rising star like Ghostface King, Emperor Sky was obviously on the decline. Hence, she was no longer as enthusiastic. After returning to the Fiend Star, she did not want to make a big deal out of it. She wanted to understand the situation first. However, when she heard Bai Feng's words, the Nine-Tailed King was stunned. You? What did you say? What sword? One of the 18 godly swords. Thunder Gull. Gull, as in seagull. It's written like that. Bai Feng was still gesturing when she was stopped by the Nine-Tailed King. That's bullsh *T. If it was 12 years ago, Emperor Sky would have the right to say something like that. However, now, I'd like to see how this old man is going to take out the 18 godly swords. Thunder Gull, as in Thunder Gull. I thought it was a song. Hearing the Nine-Tailed King's words, Bai Feng was dumbfounded. Old Master, what do you mean by that? What else could it mean? Emperor Sky was beaten up by someone, and the Thunder Gull was snatched away. This guy is just a liar. Bai Feng's expression instantly turned ugly. She had never expected something like this to happen. The main reason for this marriage was the 18 godly swords. With this item, the Bai family would have a family treasure. This was the foundation for their rise. She did not expect Emperor Sky to not have this sword. What should she do? Bai Feng immediately used the dimensional universe to contact the Emperor family's master, Sky Bearing, and asked him why he was lying to the Bai family. He insisted that there was a godly sword when there was no godly sword. Sky Bearing was also confused. He immediately created a video of the dimensional universe. It was the scene of Emperor Sky handing a sword to the Jew Tian. This video was then sent to the Nine-Tailed King. After she saw it, she immediately said, "This sword is a high-grade weapon. However, it's not the Thundergull. It's half a grade lower than the Thundergull. Its actual value is far from the Thundergull. Old Master, what should we do about this?" The Emperor family has already informed many people. I saw many godly king-level experts going to their house. Right now, there are many experts there. Emperor Sky is trying to create a fait accompli attitude. This matter might not be easy to avoid. The Nine-Tailed King thought for a while and waved her hand in annoyance. Forget it. It's just a matter of a girl getting married. It's hard to find a high-grade weapon. Take this sword and let it be the family treasure. The marriage will proceed as usual. This matter was not enough for the Nine-Tailed King and the Emperor family to shed all pretense of cordiality. There was no other reason. It was just not worth it. As for the reactions of the other people in the family, if he did not say anything, no one would know the origin of this sword. After hearing the Nine-Tailed King's words, Bai Feng let out a long sigh. No matter how one looked at it, the Bai family had profited from this matter. He could not be worried. After that, Bai Feng reported about Snow White. He said that Snow White had lost her chastity to someone. Currently, they did not know who it was. Otherwise, both of them would have been married. Chapter 1236. The Nine-Tailed King finally nodded, and the matter was settled. Afterward, the entire Bai family mobilized and began to make preparations for the wedding. The Nine-Tailed King also began to invite guests. As a veteran god king of the demonic star, the Nine-Tailed King had many friends. He sent out invitations one after another, inviting many guests. There was no lack of god kings among them. After sending out multiple invitations, the Nine-Tailed King held a pen and stared blankly at one of the invitations. He planned to invite a heavyweight for this invitation. With the Nine-Tailed King's current status, there were not many people who could be considered heavyweight in his heart. It was very difficult to invite a ruler. The so-called heavyweights were the top god kings. The god king stage was actually divided into several stages below the ruler's stage. Quasi-god kings were those who were about to enter the god king stage. God king was a major realm, and those who had reached the god king stage possessed extremely powerful abilities and had a high chance of becoming a ruler were called half-step rulers. Half-step rulers were those who had cultivated their god king abilities to the peak. As long as the opportunity presented itself, they would immediately become a ruler. Strictly speaking, half-step rulers were the same as quasi-god kings. They couldn't be considered a realm, but people recognized those who were extremely powerful. It could be considered a form of respect. Quasi-god kings had a chance of becoming god kings. Half-step rulers had a chance of becoming rulers. To become a ruler, one needed a ruler's godly crystal. However, if one's strength wasn't at the half-step ruler level, then even if one had a ruler's godly crystal, they wouldn't be able to refine it. Therefore, half-step rulers were the goal of god kings. Otherwise, they would lose the motivation to strive. In a Nine-Tailed King's eyes, half-step rulers were the heavyweights. Those below that, even if they were stronger than the Nine-Tailed King, had limited strength. However, the person he wanted to invite was different. In a Nine-Tailed King's eyes, this person would definitely become a half-step ruler. He was also a rare genius he'd seen in his life. It was the Ghost-Face King. After being with Lin Jun for more than a decade, the Nine-Tailed King's opinion of Lin Jun's strength changed every day. Especially after the Ghost-Face King defeated the Emperor Sky, the Nine-Tailed King felt like he had to re-evaluate this little brother Lin. In his opinion, this person was extremely arrogant. He seemed amiable and approachable, but he actually had a domineering aura that looked down on all living beings. No matter how strong they were, he didn't take them seriously. The nine-tailed king was confident in inviting others, but he didn't have much confidence in inviting the Ghost-Face King. Since Imperial Sky and Ghost-Face King still had a grudge against each other, there might be a conflict. However, Nine-Tailed King had another idea. Her family was actually the weaker party when it came to marriage with Emperor Sky and the other monarch races. There was no need to mention Qing Tian, who was a ruler. Even the Emperor Sky was slightly stronger than him. Some of the god kings he had invited were not on good terms with the Nine-Tailed King, but he still invited her without any qualms. He clearly did not take the Nine-Tailed King seriously. The Nine-Tailed was God. If he didn't invite two important guests to intimidate him, the Emperor Sky would really think he was a pushover. When the guests gathered, the Nine-Tailed King believed that the Emperor Sky wouldn't dare to flip out in front of everyone, even if he saw the Ghost-Face King. Moreover, even if he flipped out, could he beat the Ghost-Face King? He shouldn't embarrass himself. By then, he wouldn't be the only one losing face, but the entire Emperor clan. Due to these reasons, the Nine-Tailed King decided to give a try. He was afraid that the Ghost-Face King wasn't near the Abyss Country and might not be able to make it in time. After making up his mind, he wrote down the invitation. However, after writing a few strokes, the Nine-Tailed King suddenly realized that he only knew the Ghost-Face King's surname was Lin. He didn't know his real name. However, it didn't matter. Most god kings didn't have names. He wrote it to the Ghost-Face King's brother Lin. Then, he sent it to Lin Jun through the dimensional universe. The Nine-Tailed King waited anxiously. In less than a minute, the Ghost-Face King's message came back. It was a call from the dimensional universe. Ha ha ha, old brother White. So you've returned to the Fiend Planet to hold a wedding for your family. Congratulations. Yes, brother Lin. The wedding will be held in 12 days. I wonder if you'll do me the honor of attending your, what about your granddaughter's wedding? The Nine-Tailed King and Lin Jun addressed each other as brother. In terms of seniority, Bai Susu was Lin Jun's granddaughter after tens of thousands of lifetimes. The Nine-Tailed King felt that his words were appropriate. However, he clearly saw the muscles on Lin Jun's face twitch as if he was enduring something. Granddaughter? Lin Jun was speechless for a moment. However, he quickly adjusted himself and chuckled. What a coincidence. I really am training in a place not far from the Abyss Kingdom. Since Brother White has invited me, I must give you face. I'll be sure to come and support you when the time comes. Ha ha ha. That's great. That's great. The Nine-Tailed King was excited. The Ghost-Face King was definitely going to be a great figure in the future. If he befriended him now, there would be many benefits in the future. Lin Jun pondered for a moment. Then I'll have to think about what gift to give. This gift can't be too low. I think it can't be inferior to the Emperor family's betrothal gift. This way, you'll be able to gain face here. How about I give the bride one of the 18 swords? What do you think, old brother? Hearing this, the Nine-Tailed King was stunned for a moment. Then he was overjoyed. If others said this, it would be bragging. However, if the Ghost-Face King said it, it would be true. The Nine-Tailed King had seen with his own eyes that the Ghost-Face King had more than one of the 18 swords. The Emperor Sky couldn't afford it, but his friend could. Wouldn't this be a great boon for him? When the time comes, he would suppress the Emperor family and let them know that he, the Nine-Tailed King, was not someone to be trifled with. Feeling excited, the Nine-Tailed King said to Lin Jun in the dimensional universe, Brother Lin, I won't say anything else. If you can really give Susu one of the 18 swords, then you'll be my good brother for life. Brother for life? Lin Jun had a strange expression on his face. Of course, a gentleman's word is as good as a whip. The Nine-Tailed King, will say it right here. I'll be Ghost-Face King's brother forever. The Nine-Tailed King patted his chest as he spoke. Lin Jun also smiled. All right, I hope old brother won't regret what you said today. The two ended the call in the dimensional universe. The Nine-Tailed King felt relieved. Chapter 1237. The date of Bai Susu and the Ju Tian's wedding finally arrived. The entire underground city was decorated by the two families. The streets were cleaned, and all the shops along the way were renovated for free, decorated with lanterns and decorations, looking very joyous. Those who usually affected the city's appearance on the streets were also forced to leave. The Emperor Clan Ju Tian did not allow any flaws to appear on his wedding. In the morning, the artificial sun in the sky rose, and the first ray of morning light fell. The Emperor Clan's wedding procession set off. In the underground city, what was important was not carriages, but aircraft. Usually, flying was forbidden in the underground city, but that depended on the situation. 4 large factions like the Emperor Clan and the Bai family. As long as they gave a call, the underground city's management would still give the green light. For ordinary families, when they picked up the bride, they would usually use hover cars or something like that. Having a few shuttles was already not bad. The stronger ones could drive a shield god ship. That was a very prestigious thing. And those who were able to control free satellites were all wealthy and influential people. But for factions like the Emperor Clan and the Bai family, they did not care about these. Those that could appear in their wedding procession were all flying palaces. Flying palaces were high-grade goods. Even big families could not have too many. Having 1 or 2 was already amazing, and even if there were more, they were brought by friends. So at this time, the flying palaces became a big symbol of the family's strength, a big attraction, something that attracted a lot of attention. This time, the Emperor Clan's wedding procession had a total of 4 flying palaces. In front of the flying palace, 8 superior gods rode divine dragons to open the way. Each of them was clad in fiery red armor. The divine dragons they rode were also at the superior god level. Moreover, they were all red in color. However, this was considered a normal operation. It was far less eye-catching than the flying palace. The first palace to open the way was the Tree God King's Tree Shade Palace. The Tree God King's strength was not bad, but his wealth was not too good. With a reckless friend like the Violent Ape King and a worrisome brother like the Tree God King, he could not be rich even if he wanted to. This time, the Violent Ape King and the Tree Demon King participated in the exploration. In the end, not only did they gain nothing, the Tree Demon King even lost the Night Forest domain equipment, leaving the Tree Demon King with no choice but to deal with the aftermath. He was not used to not having a domain equipment. In the end, he had no choice but to sell his middle-grade palace for a low-grade palace and a new domain equipment. Because this Tree Shade Palace was low rank, this time it could be used to open a path. At least it was a flying palace. There were many die-hard fans in the dungeon who were obsessed with flying palaces. They took pictures of the flying palace and dreamed of owning one of these flying palaces. After the Tree Shade Palace was the Bridal Escort Palace, as well as the Emperor Clan Old Master Huang Tian's carriage, a mid-grade speed-type palace. This flying palace was something that the Emperor Clan was looking forward to. If it wasn't for the return of the Patriarch, then even if the Emperor Clan was a large clan, they wouldn't have been able to take out something as advanced as a flying palace. This flying palace was 100 meters long and 50 meters wide. Although it wasn't particularly large, its lines were beautiful and sparkling. It was slowly moving through the streets of the underground city. When the palace fans in the dungeon saw this flying palace, they immediately let out a series of loud screams. Look, look, it's a mid-grade palace. Wow, this is amazing. This is simply my ultimate dream. If I can obtain something like this, I can die without regrets. Bai Susu from the Bai family is really lucky. She just got married, and she's already married into a rich family. She can control this palace and travel the universe. Just thinking about it makes me happy. At this moment, countless films were instantly destroyed. Although the Abyss Kingdom was also a large country, flying palaces were still very rare. This was because those godly king-level experts rarely appeared here. This flying palace showed the wealth of the Emperor Clan. Without a certain level of strength, how could one control a mid-grade palace? Before these palace fans could see enough of the Speed Palace, another flying palace arrived. This flying palace was also very powerful. It was a mid-grade, large-scale palace from the 8 Great Hammers. Although Lustman didn't arrive in time, the other 3 people came. They even brought the 8 Great Hammer signature, a large-scale mid-grade palace to support the Emperor Clan. After all, The Emperor clan was considered their friend and had even tipped off Lustman before. This flying palace might not be more expensive than the Emperor clan Speed Palace, but it won in terms of size. In addition to the 8 Great Hammers' reputation on the Fiend planet, almost everyone knew about this flying palace. However, they had never seen this flying palace being used to escort a bride. The 8 Great Hammers' Flying Palace. This is amazing. This isn't just a simple flying palace. Now that the 8 Great Hammers have the 4 great godly kings and are very famous on the Fiend planet, it's a huge honor for them to send out a flying palace. This Emperor clan's hidden power is too strong. That's right. Whoever dares to provoke him must be tired of living. After the large-scale mid-grade palace, the last flying palace was even more impressive. This flying palace was actually a skeleton palace. This palace was similar to the demonic Corpse King's skeleton palace, but it was bigger and stronger. It was a mid-grade palace. The entire palace was made up of skulls, including the Zombie King, the Undead Divine Knight, the Hell Black Dragon King, and so on. Every skull was once a powerful undead. It was said that they came from the undead's forbidden grounds. They were naturally formed in the forbidden grounds of the undead and were filled with killing intent. If someone with a weak mind tried to control them, they would be turned into a lunatic. The owner of this palace was also a powerful godly king expert, the 9 Ghost King who struck fear in people's hearts. A thick killing intent came with the palace. Those brainless fans who were passionate about commenting on it couldn't help but lower their voices. The 9 Ghost King's name was very famous in the nearby star systems, but not many people had the guts to comment on him. However, the fanaticism and envy in everyone's eyes couldn't be hidden no matter what. Following behind the 4 flying palaces was a group of free satellites. Even a shield god worship didn't have the right to enter this scene. The Ju-Tian sat in the control cabin of the Imperial Skies flying palace. The crystal glass was open, allowing others to see. He could also feel the envious and reverent gazes of others. He was very happy. As long as he married by Susu, he believed that there would come a day when he would have the same power and influence on the Fiend planet as he had in the Primordial Realm. When the time came, he would definitely take care of one person, and that person was Lin Jun. He would definitely take revenge on the person who had destroyed his dreams 1,000,000 times over. Just as they were thinking about this wonderful thing, a dark cloud suddenly slid over their heads, blocking out the sunlight in the sky. What's going on? Are these people in charge of the city incompetent? How dare they do this at my wedding? This is simply unforgivable. Chapter 1238. The screams around them were probably the worst that the Ju-Tian had ever heard in his life. At that moment, the screams were so harsh that it made him want to lose his temper and go crazy. Oh my God, this isn't an illusion, right? I'm actually seeing a high-grade palace. It's not just high-grade. This palace is definitely the best of the best. Look at the material of the corners, the lines, and the shape. Even though it's covered by a protective shield, it's still so extraordinary. I've immersed myself in studying palaces for so many years, but I've never seen anything so exquisite. Take a picture, take a picture. Hey, why is it speeding up? I haven't even seen the origin of this palace yet. Damn, this isn't the Emperor family's wedding fleet. I thought it was. Hurry up and catch up. We must see who has graced the demonic planet with their presence. Nearly half of the people around them were obsessed with palaces. When they saw the beautiful palace speeding up, they were like ducks that had flown away from their mouths. They couldn't hold it in any longer and immediately chased after it. As they chased after it, the crowd also followed. Humans had a tendency to follow blindly, even gods. Moreover, in a place like the demonic planet, ordinary gods weren't worth much. Influenced by the palace fanatics, the people around them all chased after the huge palace that had just swept across the sky. Who would look at a BMW when there was a Rolls-Royce? As soon as the onlookers left, the situation instantly became a little awkward. The Ju-Tian's fleet slowly flew across the empty street. The Ju-Tian's expression was so ugly that it was as if his mother had died. Who is it? This is a deliberate disruption. The Ju-Tian angrily punched the control panel. He felt like killing someone. However, Whether it was his visual inspection or the pictures taken from the dimensional universe, everything was very blurry. There was a layer of protective shield outside the flying palace. It was hazily activated, making it impossible for people to see the exact situation of the palace. It was as if they were looking at flowers in a fog. He was very sure that the person who was controlling the palace was doing this on purpose to embarrass him. The divine dragon knights, leading the way, all hung their heads listlessly. There wasn't even a single person on the road, so what was the point of continuing to lead? Everyone was very depressed. They had gone through so much trouble to make such a big scene, but the limelight had been stolen by someone else. The arrogant momentum they had at the beginning was now gone. Young master, maybe it's just a coincidence. Don't worry too much about it. The person who was with the Jew Tion comforted him. Absolute Heaven reluctantly nodded his head. He could only hope that this was the case. Only a top-notch God King or a half-step God King would be able to operate such a luxurious palace. Even if it was intentional, there was nothing he could do about it. The Jew Tion finally returned to normal when the wedding procession arrived near the Bai residence. Inform the Bai clan that we've arrived. The wedding procession arrived at the entrance of the Bai family. The place had been prepared long ago, decorated with lanterns and colored banners. It was extremely luxurious. The entire Bai clan was very satisfied with the Jew Tion as their son-in-law. There were only two people who weren't satisfied. One was Snow White, who had directly refused. The other was Bai Susu, who had wanted to refuse, but the Bai clan hadn't given her a chance. Seeing the wedding procession arrive, the Bai clan immediately began to prepare. The wedding here was different from that on Earth. The groom didn't need to pass the 5 trials to get married. He only needed to send the bride's betrothal gifts, and then the bride would come out on her own and leave on the flying ship. This was because the men here had a higher status, while the women were just subordinates. It wasn't monogamous. The flying palace stopped at a landing pad about 5,000 meters away from the Bai clan's entrance. The bride had to walk this distance herself, symbolizing that she was going to her husband's home. Many floating cars carrying the betrothal gifts drove out and flew into the Bai clan. The betrothal gifts on the cars were all revealed, showing the man's strength. After a while, the bride was finally about to come out. Bai Susu had already been dressed up. She was extraordinarily beautiful in her wedding dress, like a fairy. Meng, and a few other female guards supported her. In fact, they were holding her hostage, not giving her a chance to resist or escape. Meng said to Bai Susu while walking, "Second miss, you're getting married this time. Remember to come back often." Bai Susu walked in a daze. Her heart was cold, and she didn't know what her future would be like. After walking out of the Bai clan's entrance, she needed to take a turn to get to the landing pad. From this angle, she couldn't see the flying palace. The Monarch clan has already informed us. The most beautiful flying palace is there. Second miss, just go up. We'll take the other palaces and follow you. The others couldn't go with the bride, so Bai Susu had to go alone. Bai Susu nodded numbly and walked forward alone. She knew she had no other choice. This was a scene she had to go through. However, she had already made up her mind. When she was there, she would rather die than marry a Jew Tion. At most, she would run away. If she couldn't run away, she would just die. After walking alone for a while, Bai Susu arrived at the landing pad after a turn. She was looking for the flying palace. This was also a rule. The bride had to find the palace herself. It meant that she was looking for her in-laws. However, they would usually tell her which palace it was. Usually, the palace was the best. It could be seen at a glance, and there would be some things hanging on it as a sign. There was no way she couldn't find it. However, Bai Susu was a little confused. The moment she turned, she felt the space around her tremble. It was as if she had crossed a space-time barrier and walked into another world from the real world. Then, she saw a few palaces. She was very sure that one of them was the one for the wedding. It was a huge flying palace that was 1,000 meters long. Its design was so domineering that it made people respect it. Compared to this, the other palaces were nothing. Moreover, there was a layer of gray light screen between this palace and the other palaces. It gave the illusion that they were in different worlds. I must be under too much pressure. I have to be strong. Bai Susu, you can do it. Bai Susu took a deep breath. She took a few steps forward and boarded the flying palace. After she boarded, the palace immediately rose into the air. Then, Bai Susu sent a message to her family in the dimensional universe, indicating that she had set off. Then, the people of the Bai family followed them out and boarded their own aircraft. The aircraft took off one after another, heading towards the wedding venue that the two families had agreed on. The wedding venue wasn't at the Monarch clan. Instead, it was at the center of the underground city. There was a huge wedding hall that was prepared for the big families so that the wedding could be held in front of everyone.